those Iraqi agents, these are not members of other terrorist groups that had allied themselves with Iraq, but Iraqi agents that may have been put into place in various parts of the world. We've heard reports of these. We don't know who or how many there might be. We only have the expulsions, in some cases, of Iraqi diplomats or other citizens to go by. The second component would be those Palestinian groups, such as the Abu Nidal organization, Abu Abbas, that have come to Baghdad, that have thrown their lot in with the Iraqi cause, that he could use in carrying out a campaign of terrorism.
Everybody says just automatically these days that Abu Nidal is currently in Baghdad. How do we know that?
These are simply reports that he is, and in fact it doesn't make any difference whether he personally is or not. And indeed, when people talk about the Abu Nidal organization moving to Baghdad, that doesn't mean that the infrastructure, the apparatus, the capability has moved to Baghdad. That simply means that there is now an office, that there is apparently a relationship that has been established in Baghdad. That is not simply a result of an event that has happened since the invasion of Kuwait in August, but has been developing in the months since the end of the Iran-Iraq war, as Iraq has chose to emerge once again as the most vocal champion of the Palestinian cause.
Now, you advise governments and you advise corporations all over the world, and I'm sure they always ask you this question: how worried should I be? So let me ask you that on behalf of everybody who's watching tonight. How worried should Americans be, both at home and overseas, about terrorism?
Well, you know, we have to really divide that geographically. Americans have no business being in the Middle East. Americans that are already in Europe ought not to rush home. They may want to avoid high-profile American events. They may want to avoid protests, demonstrations, manifestations. Americans that are at home and contemplating going overseas may want to think about that carefully, particularly if they're heading toward Europe. Not that they're necessarily in danger, but a postponement simply until the situation becomes a little bit more clear than it is now might be in order. I would say if the trip is not essential, it need not be made. The other point to be made with regard to international travel is that the international traveler now is going to face long delays, flight cancellations, and that may make international travel a bit nerve-wracking. Americans at home probably don't have a great deal to worry about.
Go back to, just briefly in conclusion here, go back to the last enormous event which affected so many American lives, Pan Am 103, an attack on Pan Am 103 over Lockerbie in Scotland, which killed so many Americans and had such a profound effect on the nation. How much better are the international anti-terrorist operations now, both at the airport level, the airline level, the international police agency level, than they were then?
Well, intelligence has been steadily improving throughout the 80s, and that's probably the major improvement. Airline security has been changing since the Pan Am 103 episode, with new procedures being put in place, more hold baggage being x-rayed, positive checks to assure that if a suitcase gets on a plane, a passenger gets on the plane to go with it, and if the passenger doesn't get on, the suitcase comes off. Modified interviews of passengers, at least to subject them to an initial screening process. So things have improved. Does that mean that that now our commercial aviation is impregnable to terrorist attack? Certainly not.
Okay, Brian Jenkins, thank you very much for coming and making that contribution. A reminder that Pan Am 103, I beg your pardon? That's what I thought it was. Pan Am 103, just before Christmas in 1988. I was about to say 1989. Now, Tony Cordesman in Washington, I think, has some news. Tony Cordesman.
I don't have news, Peter. I have more speculation. And it's what Israel is probably doing at this moment. I think that if I were an Israeli, I would have and be arming and planning for strikes somewhere here in Israel, considering whether I was going to move down through the Gulf of Aqaba and around Jordan or through Jordan. I would be planning to strike at any possible mobile missile site in this area. And my logic would be approximately this. These were conventional. They probably missed. Our intelligence indicates they do not have sophisticated chemical warheads. They probably don't have biological warheads or even a crude radiological weapon. But these have been fired at Israel, at urban areas, and you will never again know what the warhead is on those missiles. And the only way I can put it in perspective would be if at the height of the Cold War, a Soviet ICBM landed between Washington and Baltimore, and it only had a conventional warhead.
I take your point. Let's go back to the map for a second and ask you a very sensitive political question. Perhaps we could go back to the sand map, the table map, in either here in New York or in Washington, because the question to you, Tony Cordesman, is whether or not, if you were an Israeli, now that you've started this speculation, you would fly over Jordan or you would fly around Jordan because of the political implications of involving the Jordanians in this conflict.
Well, Israel has one of the best intelligence centers in the world. I think that probably at this point in time they'll make two calculations. One is just how frightened are they that the dispersed missiles do have chemical warheads, biological or a weapon of mass destruction. Second, just how sophisticated are the assets in Jordan? How much attrition, if any, would they take to conduct these strikes? Politically, it would be more desirable, simply because there are a few Saudi air defense assets here, to go around this way. But militarily, if they feel they have to strike, then the best way to do it is regrettably through Jordan.
Just stay with that map for a second, and we'll ask our director in Washington to do that, if we may, because it raises the question as we look at that little corner of the map again, and you see an American aircraft carrier there in the Red Sea. Earlier today, there were 4 U.S. aircraft carriers in the Red Sea, and one of the advantages of them being there geographically is that in attacking Iraq, they can go across Saudi Arabia, and they needn't go across Jordan or across Israeli airspace or across Syrian territory if they had been farther to the northwest there, up off the Israeli coast in the Mediterranean. So this, let me go to General Traynor in Boston. General Traynor, this is a serious political consideration. One is not necessarily in the Middle East able to just fly the shortest direction from A to B.
Well, of course, it is a political consideration, but I just have to tell you that, Peter, my understanding of the Israelis, and I've known a lot of Israeli officers and the way their military mentality is, if they feel that the Iraqis have missiles that are going to hit Israel, and they've already been hit by 10 of them, that the considerations as to whether they go over Jordan or not are going to be inconsequential. They are going to go after not only the missiles, but they're also going to go after other targets in Iraq, in my judgment.
Okay, thank you very much, General Traynor Tony Cordesman. Dean Reynolds in Jerusalem. Go ahead, Dean.
Peter, we are getting word from, again, a very reliable source that there may have been as many as 20 nerve gas victims taken to a Tel Aviv area hospital this morning. This is the first hard word of perhaps unconventional weapons used in this assault this evening. I should point out, in following up the discussion here, that the Israelis told me today that over the last 5 months, since the beginning of this Gulf crisis, they have turned their Air Force into a razor-sharp Air Force. They have brought planes out of mothballs. They have increased flying time. And if, in fact, they are engaged in a form of response to this attack by Iraq, the Iraqi Air Force is going to be no match for them.
Dean, before we talk about what the Israelis might do to the Iraqis, you've mentioned 2 of the most chilling words in any language. Nerve gas. Can you tell us a little more about the high levelness of your source at the moment, that people suffering from nerve gas may have been taken to a hospital?
The source is a confidant of a man who is very high in the Israeli command, if I could put it that way.
Okay, so there's no...
I want to protect him.
I understand that completely, but I just want to make sure there's no doubt in your mind that what you're hearing at this moment is, as best you can tell from your listening post, accurate.
What I'm telling you is the first hard information that we have on the kind of attack that is underway. I don't want to go out on a limb. Let's just say that this is the first word from a source that we have had that suggests the kind of casualties that we're getting this evening.
Okay, Dean Reynolds in Jerusalem, as I said, two of the most chilling words in any language. It is a little after 9 o'clock Eastern Time. It is a little after 4 o'clock in the morning in Israel. It is 3 minutes after 5 o'clock in Baghdad. In case you were just joining us this evening, let's try to bring you up to date with events of the last short period of time. A little less than 2 hours ago, air raid sirens went off in Israel, in Jerusalem and Israel, and perhaps in Haifa as well, up the Mediterranean coast there, about 40 miles up from Tel Aviv, but we're not absolutely sure. Israeli citizens were told, in the first instance, to put on their gas masks and then go to sealed rooms. We now have reports from Dean Reynolds in Jerusalem that as many as, Dean, correct me if I'm wrong, you said as many as 20 missiles?
20 victims who we have heard may be suffering from nerve gas.
Okay, there's the latest.
The missile count would be, we haven't heard anything more than 10.
Okay, as many as 10 missiles, 8 to 10 missiles, Dean had reported earlier, had fallen on the Mediterranean coast from Tel Aviv up to Haifa, about 40 miles away, and that as many as 20 people, as Dean Reynolds says right there, may have been taken to hospital, according to his quite high-level source, suffering from the effects of nerve gas. There are unconfirmed reports, and I emphasize these are unconfirmed reports, that Israel has now launched something of an attack against targets in Iraq. Unconfirmed reports. The Pentagon says that the Allied attack, that is to say the primarily American air attack on Iraq and Kuwait, goes on 24 hours a day on a completely rotating basis. Aircraft come and aircraft go. There has been no letdown whatsoever. One U.S. jet was shot down last night. The pilot was killed. A British and a Kuwaiti jet also went down. The British jet apparently as a result of engine trouble, not fire from the ground, and its crew was lost. We are joined now, I think in New York, but somewhere anyway, by our medical editor. Thank you, in our New York complex here, by our medical editor, Dr. Tim Johnson. Tim, you heard Dean Reynolds' report about nerve gas. Tell us something about it.
Well, Iran is known to have for sure two kinds of chemical weapons which they used in the war against Iran, namely nerve gas and mustard gas. Of the two, nerve gas is the more immediately lethal and the more immediate in terms of producing symptoms. It can produce symptoms either by contact with body parts, such as skin, face, eyes, or the more lethal route is through inhalation into the lungs. Now, gas masks, if worn and used properly, are very effective protectors against nerve gas and mustard gas, and for that matter, many other agents. So
How do you know you've been affected by nerve gas right away?
It all depends on where it alights on the body. For example, if it gets into the eyes, you have immediate visual symptoms. If it gets into the gastrointestinal system, you'll have immediate effects there. If it gets into the lungs, then you have immediate breathing problems, which can be lethal within a matter of minutes. I would assume that if, in fact, it was a matter of nerve gas, and obviously that has to be confirmed, that the symptoms would have been less of a lethal nature because of the wearing of gas masks. Therefore, it may have been eye symptoms or mouth symptoms or skin symptoms of some sort.
Is nerve gas automatically lethal?
Not automatically. There are effective antidotes for nerve gas, unlike mustard gas, and if those antidotes are used rather quickly, they can be very effective.
Tell me the name of one of the antidotes that U.S. forces in the Persian Gulf are carrying, I believe.
Well, they carry atropine-like agents, which are injectable agents that are actually, in the case of military personnel at least, often worn on the thigh and can be immediately injected into the thigh simply by slapping the apparatus. Whether civilians would have those kinds of injectable materials available, I do not know.
Okay, Tim Johnson. By the way, while I have you, Tim, we mentioned something earlier today, picking up on information from you that I want to make sure we're absolutely right about. You did something of a study on U.S. gas masks as distributed to troops in the field and decided they weren't as good as those issued to America's allies.
Well, I happen to have a model of the kind used by U.S. troops by and large, and as you can see, they seem somewhat different in appearance from the ones we've been seeing tonight because the charcoal filters, the heart of any gas mask, are actually built into them rather than in canisters attached. What I have been told is that these are not as good as some of the newer models available to our allied troops, but they certainly are very effective and obviously far better than nothing. So they work. There may be somewhat better models available.
You don't mean to suggest, however, that U.S. forces in the Persian Gulf are vulnerable?
Absolutely not.
Okay, Tim Johnson, our medical editor, thank you very much. I want to go to the United Nations now, where ABC's Lynn Scher is standing by, because the Israeli ambassador at the UN has issued a statement. Lynn.
Peter, the Israeli ambassador, Yoram Aridor, is not here. He is in his mission. We are hoping he will join us a little bit later. But he has issued the following statement, which he referred to as the first reaction of Israel, quote, as we still gather and get information. Here's the statement, quote, it is already clear Israel had taken a huge risk upon herself by refraining from a preemptive strike. It is a big risk that no other country, knowing the severity, could have undertaken. We still do not have full information. So clearly a very brief statement, but this is their way of saying, look at what we've done, without knowing, obviously, what they are about to do next or the severity of what they are about to do next. Peter, as I say, we are hoping that he will be joining us a little bit later this evening.
Is there much activity over at the UN tonight?
Absolutely nothing. This place is totally closed up. The Secretary General is gone. We've been told there will be no statement from his office whatsoever this evening. His people have already gone. As a matter of fact, almost everybody was gone from here, and a number of the delegates rushed back when this when the news was made known about the strike on Israel. So totally a closed-up place, and it is opening up again.
Okay, Lynn, sure, thank you very much. A little after 9 o'clock Eastern Time, there's not going to be any high-level military briefing from the Pentagon, that is to say from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, until 7 o'clock Eastern Time tomorrow morning. On this first day of the war, the Pentagon said it would brief twice to the American press here. We've had no briefing since 7 o'clock this morning from the Pentagon, though there have been some background information, but most of what we're picking up has been source reporting from the Pentagon and a considerable amount of information from source reporting in eastern Saudi Arabia. On that basis, and including General Cordesman in Boston, the attack on Israel, how would you like to assess the first 26 hours?
This is General Cordesman in Boston.
General Cordesman.
Well,
I beg your pardon. My fault. General
right,
Trainer,
Pete.
I
It's
apologize.
been a very long day for all.
I apologize. I confused everybody there. Go ahead, sir.
I hope that Tony enjoys being his new rank. But at any
I should
rate,
tell people, by the way, you're a former Marine general and also for a long time a military commentator and reporter for the New York Times. Go ahead, sir.
yes. Well, the first 26 hours, of course, started off very euphorically, a term which has been used considerably today, with obviously a very effective initial strike against the Iraqis, which caught them cold. And it showed that our electronic wizardry and our cruise missiles and our strike aircraft and smart weapons were as effective as advertised. Unfortunately, I think we were generally misled into thinking that the air offensive capability of the Iraqis had been virtually eliminated, but as we have found out in the last few hours, that was far from true. But nonetheless, the U.S. and the coalition forces literally crippled the offensive operational capability of a good deal of the Iraqi armed forces, and apparently has severely damaged their command, control, and communication system. That we have seriously apparently damaged some of their field forces in southern Iraq and in Kuwait, and presumably are continuing to do that now with additional sorties that apparently range up in the 1,000 factor.
General Trainer, does it make sense to you, because you know something about the Iraqi army, more than most Americans, having covered them fairly extensively, does it make sense to you that Saddam Hussein would hold back his assets like this and then consciously, with a plan in advance, engage Israel the way he has tonight, 26 hours into the campaign?
Well, for him to do that, he has to be able to anticipate the sort of damage that's going to be done to him. Now, I'm not discounting that he being a very clever fellow, that he hasn't something like that in mind, but he could never know whether any of his equipment was going to survive. And I would suspect that no, he wasn't deliberately holding anything back. I think he was simply, and his forces put into shock by that initial massive attack by the coalition forces.
General Trainer, just one other question. You described Saddam Hussein, as many people have, as a clever man. I think we all know how clever he's been politically, at least in a tactical, if not in a strategic way. How clever a military man is he? I recall hearing stories during the Iraq-Iran war that his generals would on occasion return from the front and tell him to stop meddling in the campaign.
Well, that's in fact the case. He is not a military man, and he doesn't understand military operations. His generals in the early part of the war were basically political hacks, and they failed in their attacks against Iran. And then when the Iranians counterattacked, the Iraqis very nearly lost the war because of the interference by Saddam Hussein, because he didn't trust his military officers. And indeed, they had to appeal to him to stay out of the business of fighting the war, and when he did that, the Iranians were very successful in their defense against the Iranians. But the fact is, he runs the entire country, including the military, so he is the one that's going to set policy, even though he may let his military officers carry out their operations within the parameters of that policy.
Okay, General Trainer, thank you. One of those military operations tonight appears to have been, doesn't appear to have been, a missile attack on the Mediterranean coast of Israel with 8 to 10 missiles falling in a line from Tel Aviv up towards the northern border with Lebanon, down towards Tel Aviv, and including in Tel Aviv over a distance of about 40 miles. 6 to 10 missiles is reported by the Israeli military. ABC's Dean Reynolds in Jerusalem has been talking to a very high-level government source who tells him that in the last little while, as many as 20 victims of nerve gas have been taken to Tel Aviv area hospitals. We'll continue with this story in just a minute.
If this is a cold, this is the flu. Cold. Flu. Cold. Flu. If what you've got is more than a simple cold, now there's Metaflu, with a maximum dosage of 4 strong medicines to give you flu-strength relief for even your worst symptoms. New Metaflu from Parke-Davis. For more than a cold. For the flu. Metaflu.
Right now, order a large Domino's pizza at regular price and get a medium for 30 cents. It's a limited time offer.
The big 3-0. It's time for Domino's Pizza, big 3-0.
Call now.
Static Cling can make you feel like this. What's your solution? Static Guard. Static Guard eliminates static cling instantly, completely. Get Static Guard. It's your best solution for static cling.
Listerine kills germs. It hits plaque above the gum line. Listerine battles the gum disease, gingivitis, in big fight tonight. It's a right. And another right. Listerine really rocked him. It's over. The winner. Listerine antiseptic. It says what it does. It does what it says.
Someone should talk to you about how much time you spend on the phone, and who you talk to, and when and where. A Sprint representative can easily help you select a savings plan for your personal calling needs, and Sprint has better overall savings than AT&T. So there's a plan that's perfect for you, unless, of course, you're a teenager.
I can't believe it.
No one's invented the perfect plan for that.
ABC News coverage of the Gulf War continues. Once again, Peter Jennings.
I'm Peter Jennings at ABC News headquarters in New York, and one doesn't know precisely how to describe worst-case scenario or even what truly is worst-case scenario. But if you have been with us for the last half hour or so, you heard ABC's Dean Reynolds in Jerusalem use what we described as 2 of the most chilling words in any language, nerve gas. And if you've been with us for some time, you know that the Iraqis have launched tonight a volley of missiles from Iraq against the Mediterranean coast of Israel. They landed from Haifa, about 40 miles down the line towards Tel Aviv. They landed in central Tel Aviv, according to our reports from there. And a short while ago, as many as 20 people, according to high-level government sources, have been taken to Tel Aviv hospitals suffering from the effects of nerve gas. And I do believe that in Washington, ABC's John McWethy can tell us that the Israelis are retaliating, John.
U.S. officials say the Israeli government has not yet said so to the U.S. government, but nonetheless the U.S. has detected a response on the part of the Israelis. Number one, there apparently was a pre-cooked agreement between the United States and Israel whereby any Israeli retaliation, if it came to that, Israeli aircraft would not get tangled in the U.S. traffic patterns of their own bombing missions into Iraq. And thirdly, the U.S. government has been aware of reports of nerve gas injuries, but the U.S. government still does not confirm those, and they have been aware of this for quite some time. So there's obviously an air of skepticism on the part of the U.S. at this point about just what type of injury those people must have sustained.
John, I'm sorry to make you repeat this, but someone else was in my ear. You say the U.S. government is skeptical about the reports of people having suffered the effects of nerve gas.
They cannot confirm it yet, and they have known about these reports for quite some time. I can only come to the conclusion that the U.S. is skeptical about the veracity of those reports, and we are early in the reporting on this, Peter, but nonetheless the U.S. government does not yet believe that nerve gas was used.
Okay, and I must say that listening to John McWethy throughout this evening on this particular incident, John, who was our national security correspondent with a wide range of diplomatic and military contacts, the U.S. has been right on top of this missile attack since the very beginning and has been very close on the numbers, at least as they're being reported to us from Israel. Let's go back to Jerusalem again. Is Dean Reynolds available at the moment? Or it's Dean Reynolds. I apologize, Chris, no offense intended. If Dean is there, I'd like to have him talk again about the source, which is reporting that
Is Dean there? Dean. We're calling Dean in. He's on the phone trying to talk to some more sources, Peter.
Okay, well,
we'll get him here.
While he works that, Chris, what can you report to us?
Well, Peter, about 2 days ago, on the day of the deadline, the 15th of January, we were in preparing a report for prime time, had an exclusive interview with General Avihu bin Nun, who is the commander of the Israeli Air Force. And it turns out that we talked about just the scenario that we have seen tonight. We asked him about the danger and his concern about Iraqi missiles fired at Israel. Here is an excerpt from that interview.
I believe that a conventional missile is more a psychological threat than a real military threat. It can cause casualties to civilians on the streets or in their homes, and that's very disturbing. But it's not an existence problem for the state of Israel. Of course, when you come to talk about non-conventional missiles, like the chemical warheads, missiles, and so on, then the main question and the first question that should be asked, would they really decide to send a non-conventional missile on the population of Israel? My own opinion, that's very, very unlikely.
Because?
Even if Saddam Hussein is crazy, he's still not going to suicide.
And would it be suicide if he were to use chemical weapons against Israel?
He should think that he's going to suicide, I believe.
There has been talk that if he uses chemical weapons, he might face a nuclear counter-response.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Maybe that's what he should think about.
But what you're saying is that Israel would do whatever it took at that point. All bets would be off.
Israel must defend itself. Israel must keep the deterrence in order to keep its population. And I believe that we are doing whatever is needed.
Peter, I should report that there was quite a flurry among General bin Nun's aides when he made that remark opening the possibility of nuclear action, and it was dismissed later as simply rhetoric. On the other hand, I think it does show the extraordinary resolve that the Israeli Defense Forces would feel if nerve gas, if any chemical weapons were ever sent down on this country. We should also report, Peter, that while that interview was being played, that the spokesman for the Israeli Defense Forces, Nachman Shai, came on radio here to announce that as of this moment, only 7 people in Israel have been injured, and he made no mention whatsoever of nerve gas.
Okay, thanks very much, Chris. I want to ask you one more thing about the interview. The Israelis have always said they would never be the first people to introduce nuclear weapons into the Middle East. That has been their sort of public policy, while all the while denying that they have a nuclear capacity, which everybody knows they have. So it's really important for us to get from you now a feel for whether General Ben-Nun was, in your view, indulging in rhetoric.
Well, I can't say for sure. I was surprised, in fact, that he didn't bat away my question more obviously. But he clearly, it seemed to me, was making a point, at least rhetorical, that Saddam Hussein should be very frightened of what the Israeli response would be if he used chemical weapons, and he should consider it that Israel would take any measures to respond to that kind of attack.
Okay, Chris, thanks very much. Is Dean Reynolds available now?
He is indeed.
Okay.
Dean?
Dean Reynolds, who was the first to report to us some time ago that, first of all, the air raid sirens were going off in Jerusalem and then in Tel Aviv, before we learned, both from Israeli and U.S. forces, they do agree on the number of missiles which have hit in Tel Aviv and Haifa, between 8 and 10. U.S. sources, U.S. military sources, or should I say U.S. sources, confirming to ABC's John McWethy in Washington that this has occurred. But there is now some discrepancy in trying to assess whether or not these were chemical weapons. Dean reported, and we're going to question him about it now, a short while ago, that a very high Israeli government source believed that as many as 20 people had been taken to Tel Aviv area hospitals suffering from the effects of nerve gas. Now, Dean, we hear on the radio that the military spokesman says that only 7 people have been injured. Can you clear this up for us?
Well, Peter, we're getting conflicting reports. I would say that the Chief Army spokesman is not necessarily a news source. He's a man who's conveying information to the country. Again, I go back to the report was from a person who said he was 100% sure of it. You know, in the confusion and the chaos of the situation in Tel Aviv, we have had to try to distill a number of reports. This one we believe to be, as I said originally, the first word at all that unconventional weapons had been used. We are checking with the hospital, and that is about all I can say on it right now. I think it is still certainly an officially unconfirmed report.
Okay, because obviously of the capacity of international communications these days, information has become a real asset in anybody's arsenal. Dean, we've heard from Israeli officials in the last while that they won't even identify where the missiles landed precisely, am I correct, lest that information somehow reach the Iraqis?
That is, yeah, that's from the military censor. In fact, we were told that if one landed right outside our door, we should not report it, because then they would adjust it and it would come closer to our door. I think that's a natural inclination for the Israeli army.
Now, so let me try to put into that mix there whether or not, in this discussion of whether or not nerve gas has been used, we are in some fashion being subject to part of a campaign of information, however necessary. Am I making myself clear? I don't think I am. The military spokesman goes on the radio and says that nobody has been a victim of nerve gas. Is it possible, in your view, given the sources you've been talking to, that they don't want the Israeli public to know what has happened?
That is quite possible, Peter. Again, we're in the realm of speculation now as to what motives may be at play here, and what the Israeli army may be trying to tell the Israeli people. But again, I go back to what I said earlier. We were reporting the first hard word, and it was then described to us as 100% certain, but it is the first hard word that non-conventional weapons may well have been used.
Okay, Dean, we'll come back to you, and looking forward to as much information as you can provide when you check it out with the hospital in Tel Aviv. Joining us briefly from London is Paul Beaver, a senior editor with Jane's Defense Weekly. Mr. Beaver, thank you for taking the time. It's the middle of the night for you as well, I know. Talk to us about this mobile Iraqi missile capability. How hard is it for the U.S. Air Force, or the Israeli Air Force for that matter, to get at? Can they go on playing a shell game, and a successful one? And is Israel and other targets, including U.S. in the Gulf, still vulnerable to this?
Oh, good evening, Peter. Obviously, we don't know fully at the moment exactly what the capability of Iraq is after this wave after wave of strike aircraft which have been attacking Iraq. What we do know about Saddam Hussein's ballistic missile inventory is that he has developed the Soviet Scud missile, a first-generation short-range missile, range of only about 300 kilometers. He's developed that into a missile called Al Hussein, which has a range of about 650 kilometers. But to do that, he's had to halve the warload in order to be able to put on enough fuel for the missile to get its range.
So how much range does it actually have?
About 650 kilometers.
372 miles, according to our graphic there.
Right. I mean, that's going to give it. It's a very fast missile. Can cover the ground at the rate of 1 to 2 miles a second. But the problem that with all of these missile systems, even if they are mobile as opposed to being fixed sites, is they do take a long time to program, set up, often to fuel and to launch, as much as 90 minutes. The problem is then, of course, once you've the only way really of stopping them is to get them in this phase. Once they're airborne, it does seem that they are difficult to not only identify but also to shoot down.
So the U.S. anti-missile weapon called the Patriot, which is all over Saudi Arabia and which the Israelis have as well, of which we've spoken a good deal today, is not capable of knocking down this missile once it's in full flight?
No, I don't think that we can believe that necessarily, because some 8 to 10 missiles appear to have or have been confirmed as landing in Israel. I don't think that we can poke a finger at the Patriot system and say it's not working. We just really don't have enough information on that. But we do know that in tests against similar targets that Patriot has worked well.
Okay, Mr. Beaver, please don't go away. We'll come back to you in a second, but Bob Zelnick at the Pentagon has news. Bob?
Peter, first of all, according to military sources, the U.S. military believes that an Iraqi Scud missile was intercepted by a U.S. Patriot missile at a large air base in eastern Saudi Arabia. I believe that is the shot that we were all looking at on ABC a while back. One of the concerns of the military at this point is that it seems to have been a single missile, and it may have been fired for the Iraqis to try to get range and follow it up with other firings, in which case there could be a volley of Iraqi Scud missiles directed at that eastern Saudi Arabian location.
Let me stop you there for a second, Bob Zelnick, and we'll go back and look at the videotape. We have wondered what it was. It's a piece of video about an hour ago. You just saw the tail end of it there, but let's take a look at it from the very beginning. The camera suddenly swept to the left. Now, Bob Zelnick, can you see that on the screen?
I can see it remotely, Peter, and again, I want to stress that these are military sources, and that the official position of the Pentagon at this point is that there's no particular explanation for it right now.
Okay, so that's what I was going to ask you. Your sources in the Pentagon cannot tell precisely by looking at that videotape what it is.
That's correct. Now, I can also report that the Israel, according to the same military sources, the Israelis have informed the U.S. that at least some of the Iraqi missiles that landed in Israel were in fact nerve gas.
I'm sorry, say that once more.
So the Israelis have informed the U.S., according to my military sources, that at least some of the missiles that landed in Israel were of the nerve gas variety.
Bob Zelnick at the Pentagon. That is the second indication we have, the first from Dean Reynolds in Jerusalem, and the second from Bob Zelnick at the Pentagon, that nerve gas may have been used by the Iraqis. Let's go to John McWethy at the State Department.
Secretary Baker is at the White House tonight. According to officials at the State Department, he has made some very interesting phone calls. He has called the ambassador to Israel, to Saudi Arabia, the ambassador to Syria, and the ambassador to Egypt. What that means to me is Secretary Baker is touching base with the key Arab coalition partners, in addition to the Israelis, of course, and making sure that they are willing to live by the agreements that they made when he was in the region just a week ago. And those agreements were that if Israel was attacked and then responded, that the Arab partners would stick with the U.S. and not pull out of the coalition.
Well, that is an agreement that you're absolutely certain Mr. Baker, for example, made with the Syrians, because the Syrian foreign minister very publicly said if the Israelis and the Iraqis mixed it up, which was the sort of colloquial way he put it, then Syria would have to concentrate on the Israelis.
The Syrian foreign minister said in the presence of Baker that the Israelis should not respond if they were attacked. He did not say in public that Syria would pull out of the coalition, and U.S. officials have indicated to me that Syria made a pledge to the U.S. when Baker was there that they would stick with the coalition, but because of domestic political problems, the Syrians would find it extremely difficult to say that in public.
Okay, I just want to point out we didn't say they would pull out of the coalition, but they certainly threatened they might have to concentrate on the Israelis and not on the Iraqis. Let's go to Britt Hume at the White House. Britt.
Peter, following up on what Jack just reported, almost the entire Bush High Command has been gathered here this evening in National Security Advisor Scowcroft's office to include Secretary of State Baker, as he said, National Security Advisor Scowcroft, his deputy Bob Gates, the Chief of Staff Sununu, and others. To our knowledge, the President has not joined that group and has not left the family quarters this evening where he was, but it's an indication of just how significant this development is. It is, as everyone has suggested, not something that the United States government and the Bush administration was not expecting or was not fearing, but it obviously is one of the nightmare scenarios that they had to deal with ahead of time.
Okay, Britt, thank you very much. The Kuwaiti ambassador to the United Nations said this evening he hoped there would not be an Israeli reaction. And here is an indication of just how sensitive things are on the involvement of Israel and the Arabs. While Arabs are members of the anti-Iraq coalition with the United States, the Kuwaiti ambassador to the UN said if the Israelis do respond, it complicates the matter, but we should not exaggerate the situation. For most of the day, the Kuwaiti ambassador to the United Nations, but particularly the Kuwaiti ambassador to Washington, have hardly been able to conceal, and no reason they should, their satisfaction that their country is, if all reports are correct, in the process of being liberated for them by the multinational coalition, of which in the early stages of the air campaign, we are told not only did the Kuwaitis play a role, but lost one of their aircraft. Back to the White House. Britt.
Peter, I just wanted to note one more point, and that was that a few weeks ago, when this idea that the Iraqis might try to draw Israel into the fighting by some kind of an attack, much like that which has been described tonight, was raised with the president here at the White House in a news conference, he refused to say what the reasons were for what he said. But his remark was that he was not concerned about that splitting the coalition. He said, I'm not going to go into any detail as to why I'm not, but no, I don't believe that will happen. And of course, that was prior to all of the diplomacy undertaken in the final hours of before all this started by Secretary Baker. So presumably the report that there was an agreement existed even prior to that, and that's at least some basis for hope here in this administration tonight.
Okay, but I cannot say too strongly for those Americans who are perhaps not as familiar with the Middle East as some of the commentators you've listened to in the last 27 hours, how complicating an issue Arab-Israeli affairs are when it comes to mounting an attack on Iraq, even when the leaders of Iraq, leaders of Syria, for example, and Egypt, can hardly wait to claim, with Saddam Hussein out of the way for themselves, the paramount leadership in the Arab world. There is no part of the world which is more complicated in the first instance and ultimately complicated by the presence of Israel in considerable measure because so many of the Arabs, particularly those who have not realized their dreams as fully as they would like to have in the 20th century, have tended to blame Israel for many of their problems. We'll be right back after these messages and a word from your local station.
This is ABC News' continuing coverage of the Gulf War. Excedrin headache, 1968.
I can fix it myself.
It's walking!
Pull the plot.
Oh, you have a headache.
An Excedrin headache. Excedrin headaches have been around for years, but today there's aspirin-free Excedrin. It's strong medicine that works on today's tough headaches. Life is full of Excedrin headaches, so isn't it great that the makers of Excedrin also make aspirin-free Excedrin? Aspirin-free Excedrin, at last. It's now.
It's neat.
And so discreet. Playtex Portables, a full-size tampon and a compact plastic applicator packed smaller. Playtex Portables, now neat, discreet.
Introducing Glade Plug-ins Air Freshener. It keeps
on freshening. And freshening.
and freshening.
Plug it in, plug it in.
New Glade Plug-ins freshens for 30 days.
Plug it in, plug it in.
Gently, constantly warms this refill cartridge for a full 30 days.
Freshens 30 days, freshens out of your way. Plug it in, plug it in.
After 30 days, just pop in a refill. Try Glade Plug-ins and plug into 30-day freshness.
Plug it in.
When 4 slender, no-fat calories taste like butter, it's got to be Molly.
I won't wear anything without Cross Your Heart, because great looks start with Cross Your Heart. With crisscross shaping, I always look better.
The Cross Your Heart bra. Great looks start with Cross Your Heart from Playtex.
The fit that makes the fashion.
Iraq attacks Israel. Missiles have hit Tel Aviv. With the situation unfolding moment to moment, stay with ABC News throughout this night.
The Oldsmobile Elite, the ultimate honor Oldsmobile bestows on its dealers. Only one area dealer has received the Oldsmobile Elite Award every year since its inception. Bob Hastings Oldsmobile. The elite status symbolizes a dedication to sales professionalism, to customer satisfaction, and to overall excellence. For a car you can depend on and a dealer you can believe in, it's Bob Hastings Oldsmobile, the elite Olds dealer.
Terry, coffee black, thanks. Gee, boss, lovely tie. Ouch. Have you been working out? Did I mention the wife wants to name our firstborn after you, Big?
Excuse me, Jim, but if it's all right with you, I'd like to begin buying our paper and office supplies at the paper cutter. I figure we could save up to 50%.
Gee, boss.
You be the boss.
Tie.
Shop the Paper Cutter's new office supplies catalog today. Delivery service is available.
This is it, our biggest sale of the year. We've marked down every carpet in stock as much as 70% off. We have $40 carpet, now reduced to $9.99. We mean business.
What about installation?
Install it for free.
Can we mark down remnants another 10%?
Do it.
Our customers want 6 months to pay with no interest.
Just handle it.
What about area rugs?
50% off our entire inventory. Listen, I don't want you to refuse any reasonable offer.
WOKR 13 in Rochester.
ABC News continuing coverage of the Gulf War. Once again in New York, Peter Jennings.
It is almost 3 hours now since the air raid sirens sounded in Jerusalem and in Tel Aviv and perhaps in Haifa, and the Iraqis launched a volley of missiles along the Israeli Mediterranean coast, as many as 8 and 10. We cannot tell you yet what damage they have done because the Israelis are keeping this very close to the vest. There are some reports that the Israelis are already in the process of retaliating against the Iraqis, and there is one report from ABC's Dean Reynolds in Jerusalem, quoting very high government sources, that some Israelis have been affected by nerve gas. We have not had that in the fullest open possible way, though the Israeli government did say as well to the U.S. government, according to Bob Zelnick at the Pentagon, that nerve gas had been used by the Iraqis. Dean Reynolds is on the phone from Jerusalem. Dean.
Peter, the Israeli Army chief spokesman has come on the air and denied reports that chemical weapons were used against Israel.
Any more?
He is in the process of making the statement right now. We're trying to follow it. Perhaps if you give us a couple more minutes, we can come back with more on the statement.
You've got it, Dean. We'll be back to you in a couple of minutes. Let's go to the White House, to the north lawn of the White House, where ABC's Britt Hume is standing by, because the White House has issued, Britt, a statement about this attack on Israel and also on Saudi Arabia.
That's correct, Peter. The White House statement says that the Department of Defense has confirmed the firing of missiles from Iraq into Israel and Saudi Arabia. There's nothing specific about targets in this statement. It says that damage assessments are now being made. It says the president was informed of this earlier this evening, as he would be by his National Security Advisor, General Scowcroft, that he's also discussed the matter with Secretary of State Baker, who, as we learned earlier, has been here much of the evening, and with Secretary of Defense Cheney. He is described as outraged at, and it says he condemns this further aggression by Iraq. It goes on to say coalition forces in the Gulf are attacking missile sites and other targets in Iraq. Peter, I suspect we'll both feel that we knew that.
Okay, Britt, can you give us any sense of the mood at the White House?
I think the mood here at the White House tonight is one of alarm and urgency. I know, for example, that as this news was breaking on our air this evening, that national security aides were seen bolting down halls, an expression of deep concern on their faces, and that for much of the evening, as I mentioned to you earlier, the very most senior Bush administration officials have been meeting in Security Advisor Scowcroft's office. We have not been told, and it has been difficult to tell if they have been joined by the president. However, for what it's worth, I saw the White House photographer, who's usually an outrider wherever the president goes, in the area just a few minutes ago. So he may indeed have joined them.
I must say, Britt, I'm reminded of a comment made to us by ABC's John Donovan in Jordan earlier today, how that country had the wind knocked out of it by the attacks on Saddam Hussein next door today. It's almost a little bit like the White House has had the wind knocked out of it this evening.
Well, I think so, Peter, although I think it's also clear that this is something that the administration knew could happen, was aware could happen, and clearly from the briefings that we got from the Pentagon and elsewhere today, it was evident that there was still concern about those mobile Scud missiles. And obviously there existed into this evening the prospect that some serious damage could be done. And as we reported earlier, the mood here today, about midday after the euphoria wore off, and it wore off very quickly, shifted to a great sense of uneasiness and foreboding about what the night might bring.
Okay, Britt, thank you very much. I want to go back to the Pentagon now. It is not our role at the moment to be putting any kind of pressure on the Allied High Command, which is trying to run a war that began 27 hours ago. But Bob Zelnick, are you there at the Pentagon at the moment?
Yes, I am, Peter.
We were told before this campaign began that we were going to get a couple of briefings a day. I don't want to harp on the fact that we didn't get the second briefing today, but I wonder whether or not your sources at the Pentagon think that they are not, in some respect, contributing to the frustration and the speculation by not having a second briefing, and can you tell us why they didn't?
Peter, the best explanation that they offered was simply that there hadn't been enough to merit the second briefing, and that those who would normally brief were occupied with other matters. They tried to do as best they could by updating the news on a background basis. We went over that. I think that tomorrow's schedule only calls for a single briefing at this end, although there will be one in Riyadh as well by the senior military command. So we should have one about 7 a.m. Eastern Time in Riyadh and another about 3:30 p.m. Here at the Pentagon. The frustration is very great indeed, because even as this evening has progressed, there are background briefings conducted by Pentagon officials off camera and on a background basis. At the same time, other sources are giving other kinds of information. For example, just moments ago in an official background briefing, reporters were told that there were 7 missiles that were detected in Israel. On an off-the-record basis, a source of mine told me just a few minutes before that perhaps only 7 missiles landed in Israel, but a great many more had been discerned by the U.S. From Iraqi territory heading toward Israel. Some of them apparently fell into the sea. The source did not want to give a precise count because that would have revealed or compromised certain intelligence methods.
Okay, Bob Zelnick, thank you very much. And I just wish to point out to people at home that we can live with our frustration, but it puts a lot of us in the position, the inevitable position, in continuous news coverage of speculating where in many cases we don't really want to speculate. But let us go back, if we may, for a second to a map of the Mediterranean coast of Israel and give you some sense of what we do know from Israeli sources where those missiles landed. There was a volley of about 8 to 10 of them, and they landed along the coast from Haifa down to Tel Aviv. Stop right there, if you would, please, because again you get some sense of how close everything is. Haifa is near the Lebanese border. It's about 40 miles down to Tel Aviv, and it's about another 34 miles over to the east towards Jerusalem. Now, if Bob Zelnick's off the record, background sources are accurate, the missiles will have traveled a couple of hundred miles, a little more than a couple of hundred miles, some of them falling into the sea. Some of them, we're told, falling in central Tel Aviv, some of them falling in south Tel Aviv, and some of them falling as high up the coast as Haifa. None fell in Jerusalem, though the air raid sirens and air raid warnings went on at a very high pitch about 2.5 to 3 hours ago in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. We cannot speak to Haifa. And one of the reasons, just to restate it, if you've just joined us at a little before 10 o'clock Eastern Time, that the Israelis don't want to say anything, as Bob Zelnick has just alluded, is because information just travels so quickly that the Israelis believe, rightly or wrongly, that the Iraqis will have time to sit down and listen where those missiles landed and somehow get some sense of whether they were close to or far away from the target they had in mind. Dean Reynolds in Jerusalem with news. Yes, Dean.
Peter, I think in view of all of the official word that we're getting from the Israeli army that we should discount our earlier report about nerve gas. I apologize personally for any alarm that I may have caused by putting that report out. The Israeli army spokesman is categorically denying that chemical weapons were used. He says that in fact what has hit the Tel Aviv and Haifa and coastal area, each one amounted to equal to a small bomb, and there's no mention of unconventional weaponry.
And can you tell us something about casualties, Dean? Can you tell us something about casualties or injuries? I had heard, I thought, from the official military spokesman on the radio a short while ago that 7 people had been injured.
Injuries? That's right, Peter. 7 people total.
Okay, Dean Reynolds in Jerusalem. We're all the product in some respect of our sources at this point. And Dean Reynolds has sources very high in the Israeli government who were speaking to him. Must also tell you that at the same time, some Israeli officials were talking to officials in the Pentagon on the same subject, according to ABC's Bob Zelnick there. Nonetheless, in a highly emotional, highly uncontrolled, very tense situation throughout the Middle East and in Washington tonight. John McCarthy's sources at the State Department have from the beginning been warning us a little bit off these reports of nerve gas. So for a moment, should I say not for a moment, just period, we are going to stand down on the basis of Dean Reynolds reporting from the earlier high government source reporting that at least 20 people went to hospital as the results of nerve gas, which will come as an enormous, overwhelming relief to people everywhere for every imaginable reason. John McCarthy at the State Department, you want to talk for a moment about what you think is going on out in the Middle East at the moment?
I think the U.S. government is trying to figure out what is going on, Peter. There's obviously all of these interlocking relationships that the United States has tried to stitch together in terms of the coalition. The U.S. is sending signals back out to all of those governments to try and remain calm, while all of the governments try and figure out what's going on.
Cokie Roberts up on Capitol Hill. Sorry to have kept you waiting, Cokie, to try to get some sense from you up there tonight what the political ramifications you think will result from an attack on Israel?
Well, they'll work both ways. On the one hand, I think that the main effect will be to shore up public opinion. To the degree that there has been a division in this country about going to war, and there has not been a huge division in the public opinion polls, but we have seen a division in the Congress, and we've seen an immediate springing up of a peace movement, which is something that is heard by members of Congress who have to decide about the policy ultimately. I think that an attack on Israel makes this war far more popular, and if nerve gas was used, then it becomes very serious indeed. And even if it was not used, the mere fact that we have talked about it all night will make a difference in the views of people, because it makes our troops seem more vulnerable, and it makes a friendly nation seem extremely vulnerable.
It is interesting, isn't it, that there is traditionally just that much more sympathy for Israel on Capitol Hill and in the country at large than there is for the two nations, Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, for which this coalition has gone to war.
Well, that's for very understandable reasons, though. It not only has to do with American voters and constituency groups, but it also has to do with a whole history of Judeo-Christian ethic in this country, and it's not only Jewish Americans, and one of the strongest pro-Israel groups in this country is fundamentalist Christians, and for the same reasons. It's everybody sitting down and reading the same Bible. But on the other side of this coin, in terms of congressional support, the big fear that's been there all along has been that an attack on Israel will create a retaliation and a dissolution of the coalition. There's some people to whom that would be a very nice course, because they have not liked the fact that Syria has had such a nice role in U.S. relationships of late. They haven't particularly even liked the role that the Saudis have played. So that to have Israel be the focus of attention, and for us to be defending Israel, getting rid of Saddam Hussein for the sake of Israel, is not the worst thing from the opinion of some people on Capitol Hill.
Now, before this attack on Israel tonight, the U.S. Senate passed a resolution in support of the president earlier this evening.
Well, sort of in support of the president. You could read into the wording that it was equivocal support of the president, because it took them a while to come up with the language. At first, they didn't want to have any support of the president. The Democrats didn't. So finally, they worked out this, going back to the Bible, King Solomon-like language, which says that they commend the president for his leadership as commander-in-chief, and they unequivocally commend the troops in the field. So it leaves open the question of whether they unequivocally support the president.
But it does raise this very ambiguous proposition for politicians and other Americans as well, supporting the people in the Gulf while not always supporting the president's policy.
Well, that has been true all along, and I think one of the things that happened here today was that, first of all, you did have the announcement of war and the desire to rally around the country and the troops. Secondly, you did have that atmosphere that everyone has talked about all over Washington today, of this tremendous euphoria, which on the part of many members of Congress involved tremendous relief, because after all, they are the ones who voted the authorization of force, and many of them voted it in the great hope that it would bring about peace, that it would face Saddam Hussein down, that he would say, the Americans are united, and so I will leave Kuwait. Obviously, that didn't happen. They felt some responsibility for the war. The notion this morning that it might be over quickly and we had won was a great notion to them, and now all of the foreboding, all of the concerns they have are revisited.
You know, in times of a crisis, I don't want to get too maudlin about this, but that great symbol of national unity behind you, the Capitol building,
no question,
always seems to many Americans like something of a magnet. And I'm always wonder whether or not politicians aren't drawn there in the late hours of the night to commune with one another about the national situation.
There's no question about it. It's a little chilly to be standing outside looking at it longingly tonight, but politicians who have been here a very long time talk about that a lot. They talk about how during World War II the lights of the dome went out for blackout purposes, and that was one of the most upsetting and demoralizing single aspects of that war, was to see that symbol, that beacon of democracy. All of the things we say sound corny, but they're absolutely true, and they certainly are true to the people who work here and who serve here.
Are politicians, in fact, sitting around up there tonight?
There's some here. It is late, and I think that probably an awful lot of people are tuned in just trying to get the news, but a lot of them are probably doing that in their offices.
Okay, now let's put you on the spot just a little, because I hear you in my ear that it's a bit chilly and perhaps time for you to go inside, but try to give us a portrait of what you think tomorrow morning is going to look like up there.
It's going to look very different from this morning, and very much more like yesterday morning. Yesterday morning we had, after that debate where everyone was wrung out but at least felt good about the Congress, felt a sense that this institution had behaved the way it was supposed to behave. Then after that vote, there was this tremendous foreboding, and by yesterday, terrible depression on the part of anyone who was here. Everyone described knots in their stomachs. And then this morning, when they woke up and thought that perhaps this really would be fast, and that all these weapons that they had appropriated billions of dollars for were working, and that there was only one casualty, it was really a tremendous sense of relief and euphoria. Now, all of the things that they worried about seem to be maybe happening. The questions of attack on Israel, the questions of the falling apart of the coalition, questions of unknown kinds of attacks on our own troops being possible. That will be extremely worrisome, and I think that you will find people gathering here tomorrow morning with
well, Koki, thank you very much for that contribution. A reminder from Koki of the all too obvious, which perhaps on numerous occasions all sorts of people, ourselves included today, have ignored. And it came, mind you, from the President very early today, and from the Secretary of Defense, and from the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, that this was only the first phase of an operation. We've tried to remind you of that from time to time. I keep reminding you, not out of any, not only particularly complaining reasons, but it is 12 hours ago exactly, beg your pardon, it's 13 hours ago exactly, since we had an official briefing from the Pentagon. They were only briefing on a period of the first 14 hours, and the campaign against Iraq and occupied Kuwait has been going on for 27 hours. They pointed out that at that time there'd been a very limited engagement on the ground between U.S. forces and Iraqi forces. In those early hours, you may recall, we were talking about the fact that there was going to be a mass surrender by Iraqi tank crewmen to the Egyptian forces who are in the front line. Not too very long ago, the Saudi Arabian commander of all the forces in Saudi Arabia said that was not true. We went back and forth on that all morning. But I don't think anybody this evening has put it more cogently than Koki Roberts has, that this is a real roller coaster for political and human emotions in general. First you're up and first you're down. So we remind ourselves, as we have been reminded so many times, this may well be a long campaign. Saddam Hussein, who we've seen in public, or we believe we've seen in public a couple of times today, has a very large army. The question of its effectiveness is very much in question at the moment. You've heard reports about massive attacks on the Republican National Guard, the most elite soldiers, allegedly, in the Iraqi army, in order to break the morale and to sap the strength psychologically from the center of the Iraqi military machine. But so much of this is based on very sparse reporting about targets, about what targets have been hit throughout the day. It is now 10 o'clock Eastern Time, and for those of you who have joined us from around the country, we want to try to update you before we continue with our continuing coverage as to what we know over the last several hours. 10 o'clock in the eastern United States, 7 o'clock on the West Coast, 6 o'clock in Baghdad, and 5 o'clock in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. In the Middle East tonight, the Iraqis launched a Scud missile attack on Israel, a volley of missiles between 8 and 10, which landed up and down the Israeli coast between Tel Aviv and Haifa. Earlier reports by us and other people that nerve gas may have been involved have now been knocked down by ABC's Dean Reynolds in Jerusalem. So we wish to restate as firmly as possible that the Israeli military spokesman on the radio just a few minutes ago says emphatically that the warheads on those Scud missiles, which had flown up to 300 miles, did not, repeat, not contain any chemical weapons. And there are, according to the Israeli military spokesman, about 7 casualties in Israel. We'll try to bring you pictures as soon as we can from downtown Tel Aviv. The Israelis are being very guarded about the targets, lest they give any advantage whatsoever to the Iraqis. There are reports also unconfirmed, that the Israelis are in the process, in conjunction with the United States, of retaliating in some way against the Iraqis for this strike which so many people had feared against Israel. There has also, according to U.S. military sources, been at least one attempted attack on U.S. forces deep inside Saudi Arabia. By this, I do not mean along the front lines where the multinational forces and the Iraqis are so close together, but if we can go to the map, you can see how close the eastern Saudi Arabian main military facility is, where our correspondents have been working, I hope. Want to go to the map, please, as I just asked, to go to eastern Saudi Arabia, so we have an example fairly close up of how far a Scud missile may have penetrated into eastern Saudi Arabia up there around Dhahran, right on the edge of the Persian Gulf. We saw a little bit of videotape earlier on, and there is some speculation, and I emphasize again that it is speculation that this may have been a U.S. Patriot missile, part of the as yet untested, or at least until this campaign untested, anti-missile defense system which the U.S. has mounted all over Saudi Arabia, streaking into the sky in pursuit of a Scud. Let me look at my notes for just a second to see whether or not there's anything else we need to update you on in terms of the very basics. The White House said earlier today that if Saddam Hussein wants the attacks against his nation to stop, for they continue on a non-stop basis, primarily from the air, then all he has to do is surrender. These are Allied attacks continuing on Iraq and Kuwait. A short while ago, according to ABC's Britt Hume, at the White House, the President issued a statement, or should I say the White House issued a statement deploring the attack on Israel, and there has been word from the Kuwaiti ambassador at the United Nations and a lot of other people hoping that Israel will cool it. There is no reason to expect why Israel should or would, given the enormous political as well as military ramifications of having Israel and the Arabs involved, as well as a multinational coalition. Now at 10 o'clock, of course, it's a little 3 minutes after 10 o'clock, you would normally see a prime time live at this point, but because of the gravity of the situation, because of the ongoingness of the situation, we are going to continue our coverage in this regard rather than break away for the normal configuration of Primetime Live. But hopefully, we will, in the course of the next hour and beyond, cover all the ground which Primetime Live would like to have covered or intended to cover this evening. We'll be back in just a moment.
ABC News coverage of the Gulf War will continue in a moment.
It's now. It's neat. And so discreet. Playtex Portables, a full-size tampon and a compact plastic applicator packed smaller. Playtex Portables, now neat, discreet.
Critics rave over Hamlet. Emotionally charged, beautifully cinematic. Mel Gibson's Hamlet is strong and intelligent. Gibson is terrific, incredible. Glenn Close is near perfection. Go see it. Mel Gibson, Glenn Close, Hamlet. Rated PG. Now playing at select theaters everywhere, January 18th.
If you sometimes feel like an underdog in business, here's a whole new way to compete. Make one phone call to Sprint and a telecommunications specialist will custom design a small business package just for you. It'll have all the cutting-edge technology that only big business used to be able to afford.
10,000 by the 30. We're in business.
So you can get to be one of those big, rich companies that everybody resents.
To get rid of her gray, my wife can spend 40 minutes. But I discovered this 5-minute hair coloring.
The revolutionary discovery called Just for Men from the leader in men's hair coloring. Simply apply Just for Men and in 5 minutes shampoo out.
Gray is blended away. The look of my natural color is back in 5 minutes. That was me, and it won't fade or wash out.
My hair takes forever, but you look great in just 5 minutes.
The look of your natural color in just 5 minutes with Just for Men.
I'm Peter Jennings at ABC News headquarters in New York. Our continuing coverage of the war in the Persian Gulf. 6 minutes after 10 in the east, 6 minutes after 7 on the Pacific coast, and 6 minutes after 6 in Baghdad. What we have coming in now are the very first pictures from Baghdad 24 hours ago, 27 hours ago. This is what it sounded like. That is in the western sector of Baghdad. That is a water tower not very far from the Al Rashid Hotel from where these pictures were taken. American pilots earlier today described as an anti-aircraft facility on top of one of the buildings in the western part of Baghdad. All of these shot from the Al Rashid Hotel. The beginnings of panic in the street by some people, though others, a soldier walking around. Remember now that what we know is that cruise missiles in part were the first things launched against the power grid on the edges of Baghdad. Baghdad is also ringed by anti-aircraft facilities. You can see them going all off at once. There were SAM sites on the western side of the city. These are shot with a night scope by the ITN, the Independent Television News cameraman with whom we work in Baghdad.
The Iraqi defenses were spectacular in their
Here's a commentary.
Where was Iraq's iron fist, its air force, and much boasted defense plan? To all intents and purposes, it was non-existent in this crucial phase of the war. Minutes after Baghdad erupted into battle, the Iraqi authorities ordered all the journalists they could find to stay in a deep bomb shelter. It was safe from the falling explosives, but pitched foreigners and Iraqis side by side. The Iraqis responded with a song of defiance. There was no hostility on these faces. There was disbelief that a real war had broken out and misplaced confidence. By first light over Baghdad, the mayhem had silenced. The attack formations and incoming missiles had stopped. There was an eerie calm. This was a city stunned by the gravity and speed of action. Roads were virtually empty, but some motorists were speeding away. It was impossible to report accurately at this stage of the conflict on how much fight was left in Iraq's war machine, or what potential, if any, remained in Iraq's hands to enlarge the war zone with a strike on Israel. The city itself was by no means physically devastated, but it was in mental shock. If Saddam Hussein was not expecting this to happen after invading Kuwait, he made an historic miscalculation. Brent Sadler, ITN, Baghdad.
Brent Sadler from our British affiliate ITN, who worked alongside the ABC camera crew and the British camera crew there at the Al Rashid Hotel. And I think in the control room, if you wouldn't mind, we'll re-rack that video and look at it again. And we'll be able, hopefully, as we go on, to give you, as we know a little bit about that particular section of Baghdad, we'll try to give you again a physical sense, a geographical sense of what U.S. hardware, because it was both cruise missiles and the stealth bomber. They're the ones that gained the element of surprise by getting underneath the Iraqi radar and causing what was described by the pilots earlier as 104th of Julys in the skies of western Baghdad. Now, Baghdad is a city very sharply divided by the Tigris River, and this camera position is looking west. West of the city through a largely unpopulated area, but out towards a ring of defenses in the west, which were designed to protect the city. Just look at the astonishing array, and that's the water tower, as we said, which is not very far from the Al Rashid Hotel. It's a very modern city, Baghdad. Particularly, there were a lot of sort of modern, evocative monument-type buildings and monuments in western Baghdad designed to extol the virtues of the Ba'ath regime and Saddam Hussein. We have no idea from the Iraqi perspective whether or not this is blind firing or not, or whether they know what they're doing. A number of government buildings like this one around Baghdad have always had anti-aircraft positions on top of them. I shouldn't say always, but in recent days. But they seemed, in the view of many residents of Baghdad, to be as much for the morale of the local residents as they were to do any particular good against incoming aircraft or against cruise missiles. We'll look at that again on a number of occasions before the night is over, but there you get a real sense of outgoing.
It was impossible to pick out all the weaponry, but I saw from...
And a little bit there of, you can see the light changing, a little bit of what it looks like at first light. ABC's Gary Shepard reported to us earlier today, and Brent Sadler reported as well, that there was not, as best they could tell, enormous damage in Baghdad, and we have not heard anything from the Iraqis of any significant nature about casualties. We did hear the chairman of the Joint Chiefs earlier say that there had been a real tight control on the early phases of the air campaign so as to avoid civilian casualties where possible, and certainly to avoid any holy sites, which may have been a particular reference to the two holy cities in Iraq, to which many residents of Baghdad fled in recent days in order to stay away from the bombing. The only sort of symbolic things in that western sector of the city, and that bombing was quite far off from then, is the National War Memorial is there, ironically testifying to the deaths of those who died in the 8-year-long war with Iran. Early today, Baghdad Radio did report that there had been, I now quote the radio commentator, barbaric raids by enemy aircraft on Iraqi towns and villages, which had left 23 martyrs, which means people who have been killed, and 66 others wounded. But we have no handle on Iraqi casualties of any substantive or substantive nature, and if you'll recall the reporting throughout much of the day, it has not changed from the U.S. side. One American airman was lost in combat. A British crew of a British Tornado fighter bomber was lost when the plane went down as a result of engine trouble, we think, and one Kuwaiti aircraft went down as well. Let's go first to John McWethy, our national security correspondent at the State Department. My apologies. Sorry, John.
It's all right.
And you just had a look at that. Did that tell you anything about Iraqi defenses?
Oh, it was truly an awesome display of ground fire. One thing that's a little misleading about that is that it is a night scope,
That's
Peter,
right.
so that everything that is going up, whether it is small arms fire or whether it is tracers or bigger stuff, it gives an exaggerated impression. Clearly there is a lot of lead going up into the sky in that footage, but it may be a little bit distorting because it is picking up on all the very hot things that are moving up.
Except one thing, John. That's exactly what it looks like to a pilot with the night vision glasses on, isn't it?
That is exactly true, and it is also one of the theories of the best air defense you can have, particularly for low-flying aircraft, is to put up a wall of lead, and that's clearly what they were doing. It looked like not only fixed position, but even small arms fire was just firing randomly. Now, my understanding is that the first things to hit in the very front edge of the attack were cruise missiles, so they were wasting a lot of fire on things that they had no prayer of hitting.
Exactly, because the cruise missiles had come in under enemy radar. Before we go on and listen to a number of other people who will have some first impressions of that, I'm reminded, don't ask me why, of a remark made by General Westmoreland to me in 1965 during the Vietnam campaign when he complained that the television camera saw such a narrow view. What we have had tonight is a narrow view outside of a hotel window of a pretty limited segment of the target, which is the western outskirts of Baghdad. Having said that, let's first go to Bob Zelnick at the Pentagon. Bob?
Peter, some impressions looking at that footage as well. That wall of lead only goes up to a certain altitude because much of it was small guns and smallish arms fire. And we were told earlier by Air Force officials that many of the U.S. planes simply flew over that curtain of lead, and they were able to do so with impunity because there was simply no resistance from any Iraqi aircraft. As to other more sophisticated fire, Well, that was taken out, as you mentioned, by cruise missiles and also by these F-4 weasels that suppressed all kinds of enemy air defenses, and by other aircraft that jammed their early warning devices.
Okay, I don't think that General Trainer or Tony Cordesman either, but please tell me, one of you, whether either of you have ever been a pilot?
I have not been a pilot, no.
Okay, then I don't think General Trainer was a Marine officer, was also a pilot. But let me start then with you, General Trainer, and ask you to comment on what you have seen and well, just what you've seen.
Well, just a couple of observations going back to the Scud business and the chemicals, which I think is...
No, do me a favor, stay with the video for a sec, then we'll come back to the Scuds.
All right.
My apologies.
Well,
any clues in this video we've just seen from Baghdad?
Well, I have seen exactly the same thing in Baghdad myself when I was out there covering the Iran-Iraq war, when there was a rumor of an Iranian aircraft coming in to make a bomb run on Iraq. It was false, but the city just lit up exactly as shown in that film. There was no airplane shot down, but the people got quite excited about the whole thing, and it is an awesome display. And I think the lesson from this is that even though high-altitude missiles and intermediate-altitude missiles can be taken out by our sophisticated weapons and electronic devices, because most of those types of weapons are indeed controlled by radar and other electronics. But I think what we've seen in that film is the illustration of the inventory of garden variety anti-aircraft weapons that the Iraqis have that are effective, that below say the 10,000 foot level, that the forces who will be facing the Iraqis on the ground with their close support aircraft and helicopters are going to have to contend with if we go into a ground battle in Kuwait and southern Iraq, because there is no way in the world that our aircraft and fire are going to be able to get all of those, as I say, garden variety type anti-aircraft weapons.
General Trainer, thanks very much. I'll come back to you on the question of Scud and the chemical weapons. I apologize for jumping on you there. I wanted to stay in the point for a second, but to remind people at home, there is now a stand down from our earlier reporting, us and others, that there had been a chemical attack on the Israelis tonight. There was an Iraqi attack on the Mediterranean coast of Israel between Tel Aviv and Haifa, a volley of 8 to 10 Scud missiles, but we are standing down from the reports that there was a chemical component to that. Now let me come to Tony Cordesman and ask you to comment, Tony Cordesman, on what you take out of that video, and we can run it again if you find it's useful. I'm sorry, Tony, stand by for a second. We haven't got your microphone open. Go ahead.
Okay. I have a somewhat different impression from my predecessors. I think General Trainer's points about their total force was perfectly accurate, but that didn't look like a curtain of lead to me. It looked sort of like fireworks and tissue paper. There were really very few weapons. They weren't firing in any kind of orderly way. There were some air-to-surface missile and surface-to-air missiles going off. They might have been effective. But in a practical sense, if you look at those photos, a few guns come up. They probably came long after the aircraft were gone. I wouldn't like to be a pilot watching that behind me, but by and large, that is not the density of fire which is going to have anything like a high attrition rate.
Can you tell by looking at this video whether there's a surface-to-air missile have gone off anywhere here?
Well, whenever you see a sustained pulse flying in one group,
that is not it. That's tracers, isn't
Those are tracers. Right. Virtually everything we've seen so far is tracers. And if you look at it, there's no curtain. There's just one stream of tracers. And he had no chance at all other than sheer luck. Now that is a radar, probably a radar-guided anti-aircraft gun, ZSU-23 Quad 4 or something similar.
Let's remind people what tracers are. They're bullets interspersed with other bullets which give off light to let you know whether you're getting close to the target?
That's exactly it. But while I thought originally I saw some individual flashes, all we've seen are streams of tracers, and look at them. They're going off in different directions. The aircraft could only have flown through one of those streams at maximum. We can't disregard it, but that is not a good performance. That's almost fire for effect.
Now, Tony Cordesman, tell us a little bit about what happens when a cruise missile, because cruise missiles, we are told, were used on targets around Baghdad. A cruise missile is approaching Baghdad from the Persian Gulf. How is it flying? How does it respond to this so-called curtain of lead which is put up into the sky? Does it evade it? Does it keep plowing right on through?
Let's go again back to the term of the curtain. It's a very low-flying missile, terrain following. There's no radar warning, so the radar-guided guns can't hit it. There's no radar detection capability in their surface-to-air missiles that allows them to hit it. At night, there's no optical capability to acquire it. The only way that missile could be intercepted by these guns would be sheer luck. If somehow somebody was firing at random and the missile just happened to fly in it.
Now, a cruise missile, which costs, what, about $1.3 million each to produce, I think?
Well, depending on the model, yes.
They have been fired from battleships in the Persian Gulf. They have been pre-programmed because somebody's got a map and said, this is what it looks like topographically all the way from the Persian Gulf all the way up to the outskirts of Baghdad.
That's right. They use a very complex digital mapping system.
Astonishing. Okay, thank you very much for joining us. We'll get back to both of our military analysts in just a minute. We want to talk in just a moment to the former U.S. ambassador to Saudi Arabia, Robert Neumann, who has joined us, about some of the political complications caused this evening by the attack on Israel. We'll be right back.
ABC News coverage of the Gulf War will continue in a moment.
When this was Grandfather's desk, every week Grandma'd polish it with Pledge for a beautiful shine with no buildup. Now that it's mine, I use Touchable Pledge.
With Pledge, smears just disappear.
Grandma's gonna love it.
Also in a trigger spray bottle.
When I think of everything I put in my hair to make it shiny, more manageable, and all it took was a touch of VO5. Yeah, VO5.
VO5 hairdressing. A touch does so much.
Wow, I just tried VO5 for the first time. Yeah, the stuff in the tube your old man used for control. The stuff that's been around forever. Now I know why.
VO5 hairdressing. A touch does so much.
If you think there's a longer lasting shine than Top Acrylic Future, think again. For long-lasting acrylic protection, nothing outshines Future.
Wintergreen flavor too.
I won't wear anything without Cross Your Heart, because great looks start with Cross Your Heart. With crisscross shaping, I always look better.
The Cross Your Heart bra. Great looks start with Cross Your Heart from Playtex.
The fit that makes the fashion.
ABC News coverage of the Gulf War continues.
I'm Peter Jennings at ABC News headquarters in New York. 27 hours now since the United States, Great Britain and France, Saudi Arabia, and the airport of Free Kuwait, as it has painted on the side of its airplanes while they were stationed for these 5.5 months in eastern Saudi Arabia, went into action 27 hours ago against targets in occupied Kuwait and against Iraq. We haven't had a briefing from the Pentagon in the last 13 hours, 12.5 to be precise, but the tenor of reporting then was that the first phase of the air operation was going well. There has been no reason to doubt that ever since. There's been source reporting both here and in Saudi Arabia as to how effective the U.S. has been in the air, but then the sudden shock tonight to everybody's emotional system, among other things, when the Iraqis suddenly launched a missile attack against the western part of Israel along the Mediterranean coast between Tel Aviv and Haifa, which has changed the emotional equation and may well have changed the military equation completely in the region if the Israelis have responded. There have been reports to that effect, but perhaps as well as standing down, as we all are at the moment from the earlier reporting that nerve gas was involved, perhaps there is now some standing down from Israeli retaliation. Let's check with Britt Hume at the White House. Britt.
We've been trying to get some confirmation that, in fact, the Israelis have indeed retaliated, and we've not been able to find any officials who can confirm it and at least one has said that it is not necessarily so, not necessarily automatic that the Israelis would have done so. Now, there no doubt are officials at the top levels of the United States government who know the answer. I think, however, most of them are gathered in the West Wing of the White House right now, and they're not talking to us.
Has Britt, tonight's activities has just attracted a lot of people to the White House?
Well, they certainly, that's correct. There's no question about that, that's what's done it. I mean, there would be a team at work over here far into the night to keep the president abreast of what he might need to know, but this was more than the usual gathering. I might also add, Peter, that there was that last line in the statement by the White House that mentioned that coalition forces in the Gulf are attacking missile sites and other targets in Iraq. Well, of course, you and I, everyone knew that. I think, however, that might have been added for effect by the United States government. It made no mention of the possibility of Israeli reprisals. And one further point, Peter, that the word we have gotten about casualties from this attack is that the first word the United States government officials that we've talked to is that they were light.
You're talking about the attack on Israel?
Yes, which could affect, it is hoped, could affect an Israeli decision as to whether to go in there after Iraqi targets or not.
Okay, Britt, thanks very much. In fact, the Israeli military spokesman went on radio. He's been on and off the radio all evening, warning people of impending attacks, warning people they were under attack, telling them to put their gas masks on, telling them to go to the sealed rooms that almost all Israelis had in their homes and offices or their apartment buildings. But he did say a short while ago, and it's the only official word we have so far, that the casualties were indeed light, that perhaps 7 Israelis, don't even know whether they were civilians or military, were injured in this volley of missiles fired by the Iraqis along the Israeli coast. I want to go now to Washington again, where we are joined by the former American ambassador to Saudi Arabia, Robert Newman. My apologies, Mr. Ambassador. It's the spelling of your name which always confuses me and makes me sometimes think of Neumann.
Well, you're right. It was Neumann many years ago, but it's Newman now.
Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us. Tell us what you think Saudi Arabia might think about an Iraqi attack on Israel.
Well, I think there's a lot of alarmist talk about the alliance falling apart in the event that the Israelis do make a retaliatory strike. I hope they won't, because undoubtedly that would complicate the situation. Complicate yet destroy? No. Let's look at it. There are 3 Arab countries involved in the alliance: Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Syria. Saudi Arabia, are they going to turn out of the alliance, tell us to go home and face Saddam Hussein all by themselves? Well, to ask the question is to answer it. It would be ridiculous. Egypt, they would be uncomfortable, no doubt. But they are so strongly opposed to Saddam Hussein to get on with this job that I don't think the reaction would be that catastrophic.
The wild card here has always been Syria, surely.
Syria is the wild card, and that's uncertain. But Syria has great many interests in staying in this. I don't want to take the time to go into that, or I can if you want me to. But basically, my answer is Syria is not involved in the operation. It is there for political purposes, very important political purposes, especially if after the war is over, Syria could play a role in the peace process with Israel. That's a possibility.
I apologize for interrupting you again, but are you saying that Syria is in the coalition because it wants to be a future player at the table?
That's one of the many reasons, but it also wants to be a player against Saddam Hussein. It wants to play a major role in the Arab world. It wants to have power and be visible. Saddam Hussein is a very shrewd customer. But to come back to the point that I wanted to make, Syria may take a more negative stand for a while in order to show its displeasure that the Israelis are in this situation. But I think that would be all, and it would not affect the operations at all. So I wish we'd put our shoulders against this roller coaster, at least in that one item. It's not the end of all if the Israelis were to strike back. I hasten to say I hope they won't, because it would complicate matters. It would upset the Arab world, but calm.
I was impressed, nonetheless, on this roller coaster of political emotion to which you refer, that the Kuwaiti ambassador to the United Nations very quickly rushed forward with a statement saying that he thought it would be best if the Israelis didn't retaliate.
Yes, that's absolutely true. It would be best. But if they did retaliate, would the Kuwaitis pull out of it? Well, again, they can't. We're fighting for the liberation of their country. So when you come to emotions, to statements, and also ambassadors, I've been one, make statements in order to create an effect. Not necessarily because the situation is like that. I don't mean to say they're lying. They sometimes come close to it. In this case, the ambassador of Kuwait certainly would agree with me, not on the tube probably, that if Israel were to strike back, the Kuwaitis would stay with us because they have greater interest.
Well, there is indeed such speculation in Washington tonight that the Israelis may not retaliate. But now impose your former ambassadorial wisdom on the whole day and tell us, as you've watched and listened throughout the day, how much do you think has been said for effect? And can you pick it out quite easily? We're going to hear, by the way, before you begin, from the Israeli ambassador in Washington in about a minute. I may have to cut away from you. I apologize, but please start.
Well, I don't think very much has been said for effect. The Israelis have been very careful in what they say, but that has many reasons, including military ones. I don't know what else there would be that has been said only for effect, except by the Iraqis. The Iraqis, of course, speak only for effect, because what else can they do?
But they do. Do you think strikers have a certain resonance elsewhere in the Arab world, talking as they do today?
My judgment is it has resonance among the Palestinians, which is probably declining. The Palestinians are desperate, especially those who are under
Mr. Ambassador, let me interrupt you. I apologize. We want to go to the Israeli embassy in Washington now to hear from the Israeli ambassador to the United States.
This auditorium, which we usually reserve for cultural events, I have to make the announcement that tonight, Washington time, during the night in Israel, there has been an unprovoked attack by Iraq, launching Scud missiles, or perhaps improved Scud missiles, at purely civilian targets in Israel, jeopardizing the lives of both Jews and Arabs, Israelis and Palestinians, who live next to each other, are often intermingled, and in a situation where Israel has time and time again declared that it is not part of the conflict with Iraq, it is not part of the coalition, and as a matter of fact, it has remained with a low profile, if you remember that term, for all these months since the beginning of the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. We don't have exact details as of yet. We understand that there's a possibility that more than 10 missiles were actually launched at Israel. Probably 2 hit the Tel Aviv area, and another one hit the Haifa area. There may have been another hit, but that is not clear as of yet. The missiles in the Tel Aviv area hit a neighborhood in the southern part of the city, inhabited mostly by elderly people and laborers, people who toil for their livelihood. We have so far, and we hope this is a final count, received information that there have been 6 or 7 injured, fortunately not seriously injured, but I don't know the exact details. And there has been considerable damage in property. Among other things, because that area where the missiles hit does not usually contain the best of housing, and therefore these houses were probably damaged more than perhaps other houses would have been. Immediately after the information about the missile strike became known, I was in contact with the Secretary of State and the Deputy Secretary of State and with the White House, all of whom conveyed their sympathy in the strongest possible feeling, in the strongest possible language. The word mentioned was devastated, and I must say, listening to their voices, they were indeed. And I was asked to convey this message, as well as others, to my government, to my Prime Minister, which, of course, I promptly did. I know that the two governments, or their representatives, have been in contact and are in contact since then. I would like to add only 2 further comments. Number one, that the government of Israel, and let me add, fully supported by the opposition in Israel, has declared that, of course, Israel reserves the right to respond in any way it would deem fit, without going at the present time into particulars what the decision of the Israeli government in that respect will be. My final comment is that Israel took a very tough decision, knowingly, to risk a first strike on it. We knew that we might be hit. I myself was often asked on TV, do we take these threats seriously? I did say, we all did. We take these threats very, very seriously. There's no reason whatsoever to doubt these threats. Nevertheless, the Israeli government, supporting America's political aims and complying with the United States government requests, decided to refrain from a preemptive attack on those launching pads, on those missile launchers from which we were threatened. We knew that this was a calculated risk. We have now, unfortunately, been forced to give the proof that this actually happened. So far, the state of Israel and the people of Israel, and thank God, the casualties were not more numerous. But so far, the state of Israel has paid the dearest price of any of the countries in the Middle East which have faced Iraqi aggression, except Kuwait itself. And Israel, as I said in the beginning, was not a party to this conflict at all. This is all I have to say. Thank you very much. And good night.
The Israeli ambassador Zalman Shoval speaking at the Israeli embassy in Washington. His last point, perhaps worth considering here with our White House correspondent Brit Hume and our national correspondent John McWethy, because he makes the point that Israel, at the urging of the United States, has refrained from mounting a preemptive strike against the Iraqis. But in fact, Brit Hume, are you there, or John McWethy? Are they both there?
I'm here.
Well, Jeff, I'd like to, if I may, I'd like to go and continue this political point for just a second with our national correspondent John McWethy and Brit Hume, because the ambassador has laid a very pretty heavy trip there on the United States. John McWethy?
Yes, Peter.
In fact, the United States has mounted the preemptive strike for Israel, one could argue. When the U.S. attack began almost 28 hours ago, one of the very first targets were those Scud missile sites in western Iraq, which were closest to Israel. Am I right or wrong?
Well, the United States has launched a preemptive strike in one form, Peter, but the Israelis could certainly argue that those missiles have been there for quite a while, and if Israel felt threatened, Israel also felt restrained by request by the United States not to hit those missiles, perhaps weeks ago, when they may have felt threatened by them. They also felt constrained by the fact that they would have to rely on the United States to do the preemptive striking and not their own aircraft. And I'm sure the Israelis feel that if their own aircraft had been involved, those missiles would not have hit their territory.
Do we in fact take from Ambassador Chauvel's remarks there then that the two, they're up here on a map, if we could get our cameraman to take a look at the upper map on the upper left-hand side of the wall there. There are two missile sites on the western frontier, which we've looked at quite a lot today. There's that missile site way over there on the left side of the Iraqi map. That's what has been concerning the Israelis and the United States since before this air campaign began. Our impression has been, John, that they were taken out, or at least very early on, a target for the U.S. Air Force, and that maybe what was used against Israel tonight was mobile missiles.
Well, Peter, the name on the map connotes a base,
right?
And there are fixed position missiles there, but the whole area has mobile missiles, and the United States has known very well that the Israelis conceal their mobile missiles, move them around, move them from garage-like structures, and they're hard to keep track of.
And is there an understanding here that the Israelis would have been able to keep better track of them than the U.S., you think, in these circumstances?
I don't know that, Peter, except I certainly do know that the Israelis keep extremely close track of things that threaten their country. As they themselves say frequently, it's our neighborhood and it's our country that's at risk. And I'm sure that they would argue that they would pay more attention to it than the United States would.
Okay, so let me go over to the White House now and ask Brit Hume whether or not, from Ambassador Chauvel tonight, we're not hearing, perhaps quite understandably, a considerable level of tension between the U.S. and Israel.
Well, Peter, I rather think that what we're hearing is, as you suggested earlier, the remarks of someone who wants to make sure that his country gets full credit for what it is doing. It is obviously important that the casualties from this attack turned out to be light. And Peter, I just would add this, and you may remember this meeting here when the president met with Yitzhak Shamir a few weeks ago, and there's been considerable tension between those two men, as you're well aware, and the meeting went very well. And Shamir came out afterward and said words to the effect that the president had assured him that there'd be no settlement at the expense of Israel. But we learned subsequent to that the president had said quite a bit more than that the president had given Shamir a reason to believe that the United States was all set to go on the offensive to attack Iraq and to smash Saddam Hussein, and that Shamir was absolutely giddy with delight when he came out of that meeting. He could scarcely conceal it. And so that that meeting and what was said there may have indeed created the atmosphere that has led to the restraint that we've seen shown by Israel leading up to tonight and again tonight.
Okay, Britt and John McQuethy, let's, while we're talking here, go down to eastern Saudi Arabia to take a look at some of the latest pool video which has come in, because in the general reporting tonight of the Scuds which we've been talking about, 7 of them were launched against Israel, and at least 1 of them was launched against Saudi Arabia, and the one against Saudi Arabia, according to Pentagon sources, was in fact knocked down by a Patriot anti-missile aircraft defense system. Bill Redeker in eastern Saudi Arabia. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Peter, and that is apparently what we experienced and saw here earlier this morning, last night your time, or probably tonight your time. These time zones get a bit confusing. We've had a lull in the air activity here. You probably have heard us report several times that fighter jet aircraft tends to take off on the hour. But that recently started up again in about the last 5 minutes, and we have some pictures of that. These are, again, the F-15s that are based nearby, taking off, and one assumes heading north.
What do they do, the F-15s, Bill? What sort of a payload do they carry? Where are they going? Far into Iraq, do we know, or to Kuwait?
Well, we have some details of that. They are fully armed and loaded. You can usually tell that by looking at the configuration of the fuel tanks, one under each wing and one underneath the bottom of it. Excuse me, we now have some more activity here. I think
we can hear you over it for the most part, Bill. Please continue, Bill.
That was a British Tornado, the ones that we've referred to before. They take off from one side of the airfield, and the F-15s take off from the other side. It's usually followed by a second tornado, and I think that's what we're about to hear now from the pause. Just one other note I'd like to make, and that is that we heard sirens here again for the 3rd time tonight, but not in this part of the city, in another part of the city, and that was reported to us by one of our producers.
Okay,
Peter?
Bill Redeker in eastern Saudi Arabia. We're at 6:45 in the morning, am I right, Bill, or 5:45 where you are?
It's 6:45.
That's what I thought. It's the same time in eastern Saudi Arabia as it is in Baghdad. Now, Tony Cordesman has been sitting with us again, listening to the Israeli ambassador Zalman Shoval on this question of who mounts a preemptive strike. From a military point of view, Mr. Cordesman, what's your comment?
I think it's very difficult for them to show great restraint, Peter. I think we have to remember something. We're not just talking about Scud missiles. We're talking about 3 different types of missiles. And as John McQuethy pointed out, they located 2. The problem is we can't find the other types. They're much more mobile, or at least we have had no indication of where they are. If somebody doesn't go out there, either U.S. or Israeli, they could fire again.
Is it your view that at the moment this will alter the U.S. plan of attack? If these are mobile missiles, and they're as difficult to find as you say they are, if you put the Israeli Air Force up and the U.S. Air Force, do you really double your capacity? Do you make it more confusing? Does it make it any easier for them to find?
I think you do make a significant increase in capacity, but again, we have a problem because we don't know all the details here. They may have been able to knock out most of the missiles with chemical warheads. It may be the shorter range systems with lower payloads, which may only be conventional, that are on the mobile launchers. There are a lot of really serious unknowns here.
Okay, and just before we get too deeply into it, or at least so far into it that I don't understand at all what I'm talking about here, is it, well, how long would Israel have after a missile had been launched? How much knowledge would it have before it actually landed in terms of minutes?
Well, we're talking a maximum of 5 to 6 minutes. That assumes that they have airborne radar and they can look very deeply. Probably they'd only have about 3 to even 1 minute's warning.
And as I think you said to us an hour or 2 ago, the best time to get the missile is on its way up, right?
The best way to get the missile is either on its way up when it's still slow, or best of all, while it's still on the launch.
Okay, Tony Cordesman, thank you very much. Just to repeat here now, what we've been talking about is this question of whether or not, or to what degree the Israelis have shown restraint by not mounting a preemptive attack against Iraqi targets. The Israeli ambassador in Washington saying that no other nation had been called on to show such restraint, and no other nation other than Kuwait, he said, had suffered so much from the Iraqi aggression. Bob Zelnick at the Pentagon.
Peter, the Pentagon has announced that additional missions were added to the number of U.S. sorties that had been planned to be flown against Iraq this evening and tomorrow morning Persian Gulf time, in order that the U.S. itself could undertake strikes against the mobile Scud missile targets in western Iraq, assuming they can be located. This is clearly an effort to soothe Israeli feelings, to mollify them, and hopefully, in the view of the U.S., to keep them from sending up missions of their own and joining, in effect, the war against Iraq.
Anything else there, Bill?
Yes, Peter. We now have official Pentagon confirmation that there was an Iraqi Scud missile launched against eastern Saudi Arabia this evening, and it was in fact successfully intercepted by a U.S. Patriot missile.
Does that mean that we can take it that the video we had from eastern Saudi Arabia earlier of something streaking up into the sky was a Patriot on its way to intercept a Scud?
You sure can, and I believe the explosion that was seen in that footage was the successful intercept.
Okay, this is what we saw some couple of hours ago. We have to go back really to the beginning of that video because you see something streak off into the sky, and it is a Patriot missile. Saudi Arabia is dotted with the Patriot missile. It is designed as a premier line of defense in the anti-aircraft defense system of the United States. It has never before been tested in battle, but there is one instance in which it has apparently been, as they might say, operationally successful. Bob Zelnick, any more?
That's it for this moment.
Okay,
Peter.
just remind me when we are going to get, as far as we know, our next briefing from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Colin Powell.
That has not been indicated at this time. We are told informally that at about 3:30 p.m. tomorrow there will be a briefing here, but not, as I understand from General Powell, it's from someone else on the J2, his staff, but a quite senior officer. Tomorrow morning in Riyadh, we're told there will be a briefing, and I guess the folks there can tell you who the briefer will be. I understand it may be Schwarzkopf.
Thanks very much. General Norman Schwarzkopf, who is the commander of all Allied forces in the Persian Gulf. We have a couple of other pieces of video to show you in the remaining minutes of this hour, but just to tell you that at 11 o'clock Eastern Time, in about 7 minutes from now, local ABC stations all around the country will have a chance to do their local news, much of which, of course, will involve the Persian Gulf. And then at 11:30, Ted Koppel will be along with a special edition of Nightline as our continuing coverage of the war in the Gulf continues. The two pieces of video I'd like to show you now we've just come in now from the first damage video from Tel Aviv as a result of some of the missiles which were launched by the Iraqis tonight and fell on Tel Aviv. The Israeli military spokesman has said on the radio a couple of times that the casualties were light, that there were 7 people perhaps of who we do not know, either military or civilian, though the Israeli ambassador in Washington said they were civilians who were injured. We cannot give you any indication by looking at this video precisely what was hit. But as you've heard from everybody of a military nature on this broadcast, the Scud is in the main, particularly the refined Scud, it's been refined by the Iraqis for a longer range, is a notoriously inaccurate missile. And the Israelis have been very guarded about giving out any of their targets lest the Iraqis pick up any intelligence as to where the missiles they aimed wherever actually landed. We do know this is a southern suburb of Tel Aviv. You heard the Israeli ambassador said this is largely a working class suburb. It is not altogether too far from the ABC News Bureau in Tel Aviv, which is on the main road outside of Jerusalem. Israel, by the way, has the Patriot missile provided by the United States. To the best of our knowledge, it has not been used this evening, but we don't know very much about Israeli defenses at this point. And just before the end of the hour, here is perhaps the most dramatic picture that we have seen all day. This is what it looked like when the attack on Baghdad began 28 hours ago. This video recorded from one of the upper floors of the Al Rashid Hotel in western Baghdad, where the International Press Corps, that portion of it which remains, has been. And just take a look at what it looked like and listen to what it sounded like to the people on the ground. This is what American pilots described as looking like 104th of July, everything but the kitchen sinks, had one American pilot coming up through the clouds. But General Bernard Traynor and Tony Cordesman, our two military analysts who have done such yeoman analytical work for us throughout the day, have said in considerable length tonight that while they pick up some clues here as to the capacity of the Iraqi anti-aircraft capability, General Traynor said this is the kind of thing that low-flying helicopters might face in Kuwait if they try a land invasion there. But Tony Cordesman saying to us that what you see here is, as much as anything else, an uncoordinated and unregulated show. Just a reminder that from 11 o'clock until 11:30 Eastern Time, many of our local stations will cut away for their local news, including Gulf News on the home front. ABC's Carol Simpson will be here with our continuing coverage. And then at 11:30, Ted Koppel will be along with a special edition of Nightline. That is our continuing coverage of the war in the Gulf, in which, as best we know so far, one American casualty has been the price. I'm Peter Jennings in New York.
This has been ABC News' continuing coverage of the Gulf War.
Iraq attacks Israel and Saudi Arabia. Missiles hit Tel Aviv and Haifa. Stay with the experience of Peter Jennings and the people of ABC News tonight.
We'll return to ABC following this update of local developments.
And coming up next from your news source, a new round of shockwaves.
And Rochester's Jewish community considers what course of action to take following this attack. I'm Marianne Reed. I'll have a live report.
And local families with ties to Israel watch tonight's developments with horror.
I'm very concerned. Residents are instructed to remain in seatbelt rooms.
Plus, tuning in to those first-hand accounts coming in half a world away. Extended coverage from day 2 of the Gulf War.
News Source 13 is next.
It's Coho's end of the year fur clearance sale starting Friday, January 18th. We've gathered furs from our 2 other fur salons for this major sale. Save 35 to 70% on world-class designer furs like Christian Dior, Anne Klein, Grosvenor, Lanvin, Guy LaRouche, and others. The largest selection of furs in Rochester, including many shades of mink, raccoon, sheared and long-hair beaver, fox, and muskrat. This sale is truly an opportunity. Never will the prices be any lower. When we say this is a great sale, we mean it. Hurry! Sale ends Sunday at Coho's.
Have you skied the Adirondack Mountains of New York State? You should. They're right next door, cost less, and you won't spend the day in the lift line. The Adirondack Mountains, boasting the highest average snowfall and the largest vertical skiing east of the Rockies. Call toll-free 1-800-ITS-MTNS. You have to ski it to believe it.
The American Express card invites you to Vail and Beaver Creek Resort for the winter vacation of a lifetime. The specially priced Vail Valley Ski Package offered exclusively to American Express card members includes 5 nights lodging, lift tickets, American Airlines airfare, and a free day of skiing at Beaver Creek Resort when you pay for your holiday with the American Express card. Welcome throughout Vail and Beaver Creek Resort. For reservations and dates available, call 1-800-525-2257.
From WOKR, Rochester, this is a News Source 13 update. War in the Gulf. Report from the home front.
Israel has been hit by as many as 10 Iraqi Scud missiles as war in the Middle East has taken a new turn.
Tonight, local families with relatives in Israel are frightened.
I can't believe that I'm here when my family is there and my friend and my country is in such a mess.
Good evening. He said if he was attacked, he would attack Israel.
And tonight, Saddam Hussein was true to his word. The White House confirms tonight the firing of missiles into Israel and Saudi Arabia, saying President Bush is outraged by those attacks. Iraqi-launched Scud missiles, at least 10, as shown here, landed in Tel Aviv and Haifa tonight. A Tel Aviv hospital has confirmed casualties but offered no details. The missiles did not contain nerve gas, as earlier reported. Well, footage tonight shows a Scud missile over Saudi Arabia. The Pentagon now confirming it was intercepted by a Patriot surface-to-air missile. Now some new footage. This is from Baghdad last night. 24 hours ago, the air attack on Iraq by U.S.-led planes. Dramatic footage in Baghdad. It was obtained by ABC News tonight. You can see and look at the damage that is being inflicted there. Also hear a commentator in the background describing some of the damage that was done in Baghdad. This is the U.S.-led attack on Baghdad in Iraq last night. As I recall, this footage, all of this footage, taken from a hotel. And so it's right in the center of downtown. You get a pretty good idea of what happened. We also have some late footage tonight from Tel Aviv. A lot of people with ties to Tel Aviv here in the Rochester area and ties to Israel. This is some of the damage. The Israeli ambassador was on a little bit earlier this evening, and we heard him describe some of the damage that was done. There were some casualties. It is yet unclear exactly how many and what the extent of injuries to people may be. They're still getting reports on that, but this is some of the damage that was inflicted. And you can see in downtown Tel Aviv, the Scud missiles that landed in Tel Aviv tonight, causing, again, the damage that we saw on that footage, Wanda.
As is quite obvious from that footage, the picture of exactly what is happening tonight in the Gulf War is slowly coming into focus. Tonight, we will tell you how one local group is reaching out with what information and comfort they have to our local Jewish community.
It's been an anxious night for one Pittsford family with relatives in Tel Aviv. And also tonight, we'll listen to shortwave radio broadcasts coming out of Israel.
Many people with ties to Israel gathering tonight at the Jewish Federation on East Avenue. Our Marianne Reed is there with 13 Live, and we go to her now. Marianne?
Wanda, the Federation offices are a hub of activity tonight. This is where people in Rochester who want to find out about Israel come for information, and especially when disaster strikes, and this current crisis is no exception. In many ways, the people here at the Federation anticipated this and were prepared for this event, and in a sense you could say they are executing their war plan tonight. People started streaming into the Jewish Federation offices when they first heard word of the missile attacks, and the phone calls from concerned people came pouring in.
Even though we're a small Jewish community, there's only about 24,000 Jews in Rochester. There's very, very strong ties to Israel that go very deep for the people here.
Among those with direct ties to Israel, Doron Steinberg, an Israeli citizen studying at the University of Rochester.
I want to be in Israel rather than being here. To be with my family, to be with my friends, with my neighbors, with my loved one. This is time of danger, and that's the time when the whole country is united together, and I want to be there.
Jewish leaders had their eyes on the TV screen, their minds on how best to calm the community.
Whether to give information or to help morale, to help people perhaps who have relatives over there in terms of providing support for them.
Meanwhile, staff members of the Federation also called local people with ties to Israel to pick up and pass on information.
So that's sounding like there's obviously some areas that are okay. I also understood from somebody that
Ramat Sharon was also okay, so north of Tel Aviv.
And tomorrow at noon, Jewish community leaders will be meeting here at the Federation offices to try to come up with some definition. Wanda?
Marianne, it is a situation that has gripped the entire community. What, if anything, can those Jewish leaders there at the Federation do?
Well, there's some options. They can consider organizing some type of community religious services, some types of rallies, perhaps even fundraisers. All those are will need to be determined probably tomorrow at the meeting.
And I guess just to be there to offer support.
Exactly.
Marion Reed at East Avenue, the Jewish Federation, thank you.
Almost like the first attacks on Iraq, news of Israel's bombing was forewarned, but still a shock to the world. For people in our area with family in Israel, the news confirmed their worst fears so far away. We have two reports tonight. We begin with Jane Flash.
Imagine we're telling our people to get ready to get out of here and get to shelter as soon as they can.
A CNN reporter seeks shelter in the very same city where Eli Bartov's parents live. His wife's parents and sister live just 20 miles northeast of this city. She spoke with her mother shortly after the first missile sighting.
I talked with my mother about 20 minutes ago when the bomb started, and she just couldn't talk because she was with her gas mask.
But there is frustration. Calls since have not gone through. So now it's their turn to anxiously watch news reports of a homeland that has seen more than its share of violence.
It's really upsetting. I cannot even describe how devastated and upset I am. I didn't go to work today, and I plan not going to work tomorrow because I can't even concentrate.
But Israel's turbulent history has made its people ready, as Eli found out in a trip home last month.
They sealed off rooms in their houses and apartments, and they also got a gas mask, and they were practicing how to use it.
But chemical weapons threaten to make this a complicated war in his homeland, and like so many others, now all he can do is wait and watch. Jane Flash, News Source 13.
This is Patrice Walsh. As Maxine Peters watched news of the attack on Israel and heard reports that nerve gas was used, her thoughts were on her 76-year-old mother, who is visiting Jerusalem.
She was a little nervous before going, but sometimes when you're in a situation, I think, you react to the situation. I think people, when you're not in the situation, you tend to be more, I don't know how to explain it, more concerned.
And it's very difficult if they're using deception.
Shauna Hollander-Klein didn't really want to go to Jerusalem because of tensions in the Middle East, but she wanted to accompany another daughter there and see her new great-grandson.
Both my sister and I were encouraging her to go with my sister and brother-in-law at this time because we thought it would be, I don't know when there would be another opportunity for her to see her new great-grandson.
Maxine compares bombing Tel Aviv to bombing New York City. She says it's clear to her what Saddam Hussein is trying to do.
It wasn't Israel's war. I mean, they've been told to stay out of it. They have been staying out of it. It's something that's been taking place between the U.S. and the coalition.
Maxine plans to keep watching the coverage of the attack for much of the night. Tomorrow she hopes to call her mother in Jerusalem to make sure she's okay. As much as she'd like her mother to come home safely, though, she says she doesn't want her flying anywhere right now because she figures it would be more dangerous in the sky than on the ground. Patrice Walsh, News Source 13.
Well, each bit of new information spurs a hunger for more in a way. People can't seem to get enough of the news. For that, one man from Wayne County has found what for him is the perfect answer, and Jenny Ryan tells us about it.
As we watched Israelis pick up their gas masks a week ago, Bob Karash had already heard about the warning. And as the gas masks were put to use tonight, Bob was busy listening to the bombing of Tel Aviv on his shortwave radio.
There has been a missile attack on Israel. Residents are instructed to remain in several rooms.
Like watching CNN last night when they were announcing right from the hotel as they were getting bombed. It was interesting to watch it there, but I don't know, I still find it fun or a little more interesting to come back and, be able to get it yourself, right from the country.
For the moment, there is no reason to wear the gas masks, but please stay in the sealed rooms just to be...
The war in the Gulf has turned a hobby for Bob into what could be a full-time job. As war broke out, he spent 8 hours at the controls. But the shortwave is only part of Bob's interest. The other goes a long way back. Bob is also a Vietnam vet. Listening to this war gives him a perspective different than the last war he knew. Ginny Ryan, News Source 13.
The threat of possible terrorist attacks aimed at the Jewish community is being taken very seriously by local and federal authorities. Security measures have been stepped up at the Jewish Community Center here in Rochester after an advisory was issued by the FBI yesterday to all Jewish agencies around the country. Those precautions have been taken. While they're not extensive, they will be as the need arises.
The Brighton police have called us indicating that they would provide a little bit more security through our parking lots, etc., just as a precaution. I think it would be irresponsible to do nothing.
And the Jewish Community Center wants everyone to know that the center is open to the public as usual.
And a reminder, coverage of all the latest developments in the Middle East will continue. We want to remind you to stay with ABC and News Source 13 throughout the night. Peter Jennings and Ted Koppel will keep us abreast of all the latest news from Israel, Iraq, and across the world as well.
And News Source 13 will continue with Rochester's most complete local updates with our reports from the home front. Peg Rasconi will have our first report tomorrow morning just before 6 a.m. Well, still to come tonight from your news source, the local debate on war and peace.
And looking back on life as a human shield in Iraq, we'll hear from former Wayne County resident Will Van Dorp.
My reaction to it is, of course, there was no surprise. And although I think a lot of us were sorry to see it happen, I don't think that anybody had any choice.
I'm just worried is Israel going to go into war, and what that's going to do to how everybody else is going to react.
Buick presents a special price opportunity on the little limousine, Skylark.
Well, you know, it is such a pleasure to sell somebody a car and to know that you're selling them something that they're going to really enjoy.
Now, a whopping $1,250 cash back helps you buy Skylark loaded for about $11,000 before individual dealer discount and trade-in allowance.
America is back, and it's back with a car called Buick.
The great American value at your greater Rochester area Buick dealers.
To get your very own copy of Rochester's popular mini talking phone book, just go to any area Phase drugstore after January 11th. But you'd better hurry before they're all gone.
Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time ever, I'm proud to announce the greatest boat show on earth at the Irondequoit and Marketplace Malls, January 18th through the 28th.
With Money Back Express, you can get your tax refund amount in 3 to 5 days. Money Back Express at participating mailboxes, etc. centers. We're the biggest because we do it right.
This portion of News Source 13 is brought to you by Wegmans.
A scene likely to be repeated as the tensions abroad continue to heat up. Services tonight at Corpus Christi Church in Rochester. Once again, prayers being offered for an end to the Persian Gulf War. Familiar locations and familiar themes.
Well, all over Rochester tonight, we found that both for and against the American involvement overseas. Outside the federal building downtown tonight, a mixed crowd, some supporting their president and American troops, others singing for peace.
That we shall overcome.
And an end to such conflict.
Black and white together. I think we can solve conflicts, disputes peacefully. Just war is not the answer. It's just the casualties are too high. The price is too high.
Others showing their support for the president's effort, marching with American flags in front of the Liberty Pole downtown.
I really support what the president has done so far, and I think it is necessary in a time of crisis to stand up and say what you believe.
All points of view at 2 downtown locations tonight, demonstrations and locations to be repeated, no doubt, in the days ahead.
Also, a continuing story this evening, the homecoming of Will Van Dorp. You may remember him, one of the first American hostages released from captivity in Iraq. Tonight, the man originally from Marion, Wayne County came home, a reunion his family had been waiting for months.
Last month, Will Van Dorp was released after being held hostage in Iraq for more than 3 months. Tonight was his first visit with his parents since he was held in Iraq. And while he may have hoped it would be a visit without talks of the Middle East, that seemed impossible since war broke out yesterday and as he watched news reports of Iraq bombing Israel tonight. For Will, his return home to the United States is something he is still puzzled about.
I still don't understand by what fluke he came to release us.
A release that he thinks Hussein may now regret.
There's a good chance that he did reconsider when he released us and moved the Kuwaitis in to take our place. Either that or it was his thought all along that we had served our purpose.
For Will's parents, they don't need to understand because for them all that matters now is that their son is home.
No more aan dat rollercoaster waar we waren aan. That was the bad thing about it when he was in Iraq.
While Will was shocked after hearing the news that we were in a war, it is something he feels couldn't be avoided.
I thought it was inevitable if Saddam Hussein would not withdraw from Kuwait.
Saddam Hussein's withdrawal from Kuwait is something Will Van Dorp waits for with the rest of the world. Cindy Hernandez, News Source 13.
Well, our forecast is coming up next from meteorologist Glenn Johnson.
And later in sports, Mike Catalano will have the story of the Bills' team connection to the Persian Gulf.
No, I think Israel is a strong ally, and I look forward to them to joining the forces of the United States to annihilate that child molester.
I feel sorry for the people because they're not even involved in it.
Double your value this week at Wegmans. Throughout the store, you'll find buy one, get one free savings. Save on grocery items, frozen foods, dairy products, general merchandise. Save on baked goods. Savings down every single aisle. Don't miss buy one, get one free week this week at Wegmans, where every day you get our best.
Every day you get our best. That's our dedication.
Over time, European cars have evolved into fine luxury automobiles. The Lexus LS400, however, achieved car and driver's highest customer satisfaction ratings ever in value, workmanship, and overall satisfaction in just its first year. So much for the theory of evolution. Test drive the LS400 at Dorsho Lexus.
You know when it's right, you know when you feel it, baby. You hold it, you hear it, you taste it, it's right. You got the right one, baby. It's this irrepressibly lovable, unsurpassably quotable, and intimately soulful. You got the right one, baby.
With 100% NutraSweet.
The Xerox Total Satisfaction Guarantee is one of the 10 most significant events in the history of the plain paper copier industry.
Significantly better than that of any of its competitors.
The Xerox Total Satisfaction Guarantee. When you put together better products and services, you can put together a better guarantee.
A consumer's dream. Putting it together.
Faxing, scanning, copying, printing. Xerox, the document company.
This portion of News Source 13 is brought to you by Lazy Boy.
A lot of the demonstrators met with snow downtown today.
Yeah, without a doubt. A little bit of light snow. Our weather very tranquil, of course, compared to events around the world. You need a little peace and quiet. Head outside. Some nice light snow falling. We're going to take a look at a Rochester radar time lapse, and we'll put into motion some of the light snow that we did have from earlier today. Not a lot going on, at least initially, but keep your eyes out to the west. You can see this band of precipitation that begins to start to move in, and again, not much accumulation, anywhere from about a ½ inch to about a ¼ of an inch of accumulation. And just as quickly as it moves in, it's starting to come to an end, at least up around Rochester. Let's go to live Rochester radar now, show you what we have at the current time, and you can see most of the activity still down to the south. And in fact, there we go, now we got the picture. Most of it is still well down to the south. There's still going to see maybe a ½ inch to an inch down south of the New York State Thruway. A lot of the snow has actually come to an end, at least up here in Rochester. Let's go above the clouds now. The satellite time lapse is going to put the clouds into motion. Got a very weak weather disturbance that's pushing through right now, and it's really not going to give us much of a problem, at least through the rest of tonight and into tomorrow. You can see how it continues to show up pretty well in through most of the Great Lakes region, and in fact, most of the clouds will be with us through tonight and then well into tomorrow. Currently, right now, we do have mainly cloudy skies. Temperature, for the most part, is down to about 13 degrees and continues to cool down quite a bit. And in fact, we do not have our graphics in motion, at least right now. Well, we'll tell you about it anyway. Let's go back to live Rochester radar. And you can see that most of the snow is still down to the south. Do we have live Rochester radar still? We'll take a look. There we go. You can see that most of it is still down to the south and will continue at least through the early morning hours. And again, a lot of it will be coming to an end, so you may have to brush the car off at least a little bit for tomorrow morning. Let's see if we got our graphics going at least just yet. See if we have our current conditions outside right now. No, we still have the satellite picture. Nothing going on, at least with that, so we'll finish up with the radar picture. Let's go back to our radar picture and show you that we still have the snow falling outside. At least we can give you the forecast verbally. We're going to see a little bit of snow continuing through this evening, and for the most part coming to an end later tonight. A dusting of accumulation, and temperatures for the most part are going to be in the 30s.
Okay, thanks, Glenn.
Sure.
Okay, and Mike Catalano will be up in just a moment. We'll look at sports.
Now at the Lazy Boy Showcase Shops, save on our entire collection of Lazy Boy furniture. Factory-authorized clearance sale prices are marked on selected floor samples, one-of-a-kinds, discontinued styles and fabrics, odds and ends. The area's largest selection of genuine Lazy Boy recliners and sleep sofas are now on sale to make room for expanded inventory. There's never been a better price. Buy now during our factory-authorized clearance sale at the Lazy Boy Showcase Shops in Greece and Henrietta.
Exercise is an attitude about yourself. It's not a craze. It's not a trend. It's an attitude about life. Are you going to get in there, and are you going to fight, and are you going to do something where you're in control of it? There's a payoff for me, and I want that edge. I don't want to lose that edge.
Resolutions don't cut it. Exercise does. Holiday. Start now at last year's rates. Pay nothing for 30 days.
This portion of News Source 13 is brought to you by Computerland.
Time now for a quick look at sports, and here's Mike Catalano.
We're going to talk about the Bills again, Don. NFL Commissioner Paul Tagliabue said this afternoon that the NFL playoffs will go on as scheduled. It remains to be seen if tonight's events will alter those plans at all. All of the Bills say that their thoughts are with the soldiers in the Middle East, but to one player in particular, the daily events hold extra significance. John Kutchko has the story.
Her name is Con.
When Bills linebacker Carlton Bailey got word of war breaking out, a part of him was in the Persian Gulf. His father, Conway, is a chief warrant officer for the Army Reserves and has been stationed in Saudi Arabia for the past 3 months.
Then I was in the car and I was sort of listening to the radio, and it said flash, news brief, and then they said, well, you know, they just started bombing and war had just started, and you know, I really was sad, and you know, the only thing I could really do is say that my prayers and my heart go out for the men over there.
Most of Carlton Bailey's time is spent here at Rich Stadium getting ready for Sunday's game. His father's time is being spent in the Persian Gulf. Carlton Bailey likes to stay away from all the news reports. It distracts him.
I just went to bed. After I heard it on the radio, I came back and read my Bible a little bit and just laid down and just took it easy. I really didn't want to hear anything else about it.
And that's the way Carlton's father wants it. While he and the troops have their mission overseas, Conway Bailey wants his son to fulfill his assignment here in the States.
He just was really, in his letter, was just telling me to do my best, and as far as the playoffs and things like that was concerned, and try not to really focus in on what was going on over there, but try to take care of my job at hand and do the best in the playoffs and hopefully go on and to win the Super Bowl.
The playoffs will take place, and so will the Super Bowl. But the hearts and minds of millions will be somewhere else. At Rich Stadium, I'm John Kutchko for News Source 13 Sports.
And, you know, sports world continues in all the other sports tonight. The Amerks played tonight. They beat Newmarket 3-2. Darren Shannon had the game-winning goals. If anybody wants any other scores, they're on the WOKR Informer, extension 1320.
Okay, and thank you.
Yes.
We'll have a final word when we come back.
Only one can be the best. Only one can be the most powerful. Only one name stands out in portable computers, and that name is Compaq. At Computerland, we believe the Compaq LTE 286 and Compaq LTE 386S20 are the most powerful laptops ever designed, period. And we're ready to make a believer out of you. Right now, Computerland will beat any advertised price to bring you the best computers at the best prices. Put your potential on the move today with a Compaq laptop from Computerland.
George needed a green card to stay in America.
It's hard to find someone crazy enough to do this.
So he married Bronte. He left Bronte.
I'm with the investigations department of the INS.
The what?
The immigration.
He came back to Bronte.
Let me do the talking. No, I'll do the talking.
All in the same day.
How did you two meet?
Gerard Depardieu, Andy McDowell in a Peter Weir comedy.
You go ahead.
No, you please.
Green Card, rated PG-13.
Starts tomorrow in a theater near you. Check newspapers for local listings.
Lights, electric guitar, the TV, the VCR, washer and dryer, a computer, most of my stuff.
You may know why to be efficient. We have ideas on how. Call. It's free.
Good morning. Tokyo.
Nice job, Ellen.
You're on CNN.
Hello?
This is Daybreak.
Okay, I'll bite. How much did you have to pay for that kind of information?
News 5 Local Edition.
About as much as this paper.
Financial News Network.
Oh, Lou. Yesterday's.
This is Business Day.
Before we leave you tonight, a reminder that ABC's Peter Jennings and Ted Koppel will continue their coverage of the developments in the Gulf.
If people haven't seen it yet, some very dramatic video that was obtained by ABC News tonight. Two pieces of video. We shared them with you a little bit earlier. Some exclusive footage from Baghdad that was taken last night during the initial raids. Also some footage tonight from Tel Aviv. We know that as we explored during the news, many people in here with ties to Israel concerned about relatives over there. The initial video that we saw indicated some damage, and there were some casualties, but no firm figures. So there really are some unanswered questions, hopefully that will be answered over the next few minutes with ABC News.
We remind you that Peg Risconi will have all of the day's news tomorrow morning beginning at 6 o'clock.
And we'll see you again tomorrow.
Bob and Ellen, they're not exactly what you call active.
They're couch potatoes.
They're not nerds or anything.
Let me tell you something about Bob. He has the best work ethic in the company. The guy never stops.
Ellen really never took to music.
They don't seem to have many friends. Just say it. They're dull. D-U-L-L.
After several years of marriage, the romance does tend to go out of a relationship.
This year, don't just go on a vacation. Come to life in Hawaii.
They went to Hawaii. Wouldn't you think they would send me a postcard?
Double your value this week at Wegmans. Throughout the store, you'll find buy one, get one free savings. Save on grocery items, frozen foods, dairy products, general merchandise. Save on baked goods. Savings down every single aisle. Don't miss buy one, get one free week this week at Wegmans, where every day you get our best.
Every day you get our best. That's our dedication.
Wheel of Fortune, weeknights at 7, only on WOKR 13.
Tel Aviv tonight. In the aftermath of several Iraqi missiles, Scud missiles hitting that city. And Baghdad last night, as one of the most intensive aerial bombardments in history took place.
This is ABC News Nightline. Reporting from Washington with the latest on the Gulf War, Ted Koppel.
Good evening. It has been an incredible day again. After a morning of euphoria, this evening things suddenly turned sour when the word came out of Israel that apparently some Iraqi Scud missiles had struck not only Tel Aviv but also Haifa. The early reports out of Israel suggest that the casualties have been miraculously low. Initial reports suggesting that perhaps there were chemical or even biological warheads on those missiles seem to have been inaccurate. We're going to try to pull together not only this evening's story, but also some of the political repercussions that may flow out of an Israeli reaction, if indeed there is one. At this hour, we do not know if the Israelis have reacted militarily. And also, we will discuss what will happen throughout the region, whether or not there is a reaction. As all of this goes on, the American bombardment, the British bombardment, the Saudi bombardment, air sorties continue to flow out of eastern Saudi Arabia against Iraq and against occupied Kuwait. We're going to begin, however, by first taking a look back at what has happened this evening, beginning with what happened during World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
It is just a little more than 24 hours since the first missiles and warplanes began attacking positions inside Iraq and Kuwait. The Bush administration expresses cautious optimism about the initial effects of what is now called Operation Desert Storm, but the president has warned against taking anything for granted, and we are reminded constantly that this is the beginning of what could be a very lengthy fight with the Iraqis. Air raid sirens, you can hear them in the background. Those are air raid sirens in Jerusalem, and ABC's Dean Reynolds is there. Dean, it's yours.
Peter, the air raid sirens began about 30 minutes ago. The Israelis had said that they would not sound the sirens unless they believed missiles had been launched in their direction or were about to be launched. Peter, I think we really should head inside. The sirens are starting again, and I think that's what we will do, and probably talk to you from inside the next time we chat.
One report, unconfirmed, that there has been an explosion in Tel Aviv. We will do our best to confirm that just as quickly as we can, but as you heard just a couple of moments ago from ABC's Dean Reynolds, the air raid warning sirens were going in Jerusalem.
Peter, if you can imagine, we are in a small edit suite, about 6 of us just about to seal the room. Everybody has their gas mask at hand as per instructions, but so far I can't confirm that any attack of any kind is underway.
Dean Reynolds, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Peter. I don't know if you can hear me through this contraption.
Yes, I can hear you just fine, so don't worry about your ability to communicate with us at all, and we can hear your radio in the background. I gather that people throughout the country have been ordered to put their gas masks on?
That's correct. And to go to a sealed room. You could hear it now. Peter, we are hearing explosions now in Tel Aviv. Radio confirms, Peter, that it was a missile attack.
Or there is a missile attack?
Or actually, the way they're putting it is there is a missile attack.
The Iraqi ambassador to Belgium was saying earlier today that the attack on Israel is coming, and nobody, quite frankly, paid very much attention to him at the time. He said
The U.S. government is now confirming there have been 6 missile hits in Tel Aviv, number one, and the reason they do not believe they are chemical attacks are the following reasons. Number one, the explosions are too big for chemical warfare weapons, so they believe they were just a conventional high-explosive warhead. Number two, there has been no indication of anyone coming down with the normal symptoms that a chemical attack would indicate.
Saddam Hussein is one of the leaders of the last decade who signaled us every time publicly exactly what he was going to do, and when he does it, we tend to be surprised because it's all so outrageous.
2 of them were directed at Haifa, and they hit that target. 2 of them hit Tel Aviv. Haifa is, of course, north of Tel Aviv. 1 of them fell between Haifa and Tel Aviv, and 1 to the south of Tel Aviv. So they sort of worked their way down the coast from Haifa to the north, 1 between Haifa and Tel Aviv, 2 on Tel Aviv, and 1 south of Tel Aviv.
And there may have been as many as 20 nerve gas victims taken to a Tel Aviv area hospital this morning.
The Israelis have informed the U.S. that at least some of the Iraqi missiles that landed in Israel were in fact nerve gas.
I'm sorry, say that once more.
So the Israelis have informed the U.S., according to my military sources, that at least some of the missiles that landed in Israel were of the nerve gas variety.
Secretary Baker is touching base with the key Arab coalition partners, in addition to the Israelis, of course, and making sure that they are willing to live by the agreements that they made when he was in the region just a week ago. And those agreements were that if Israel was attacked and then responded, that the Arab partners would stick with the U.S. and not pull out of the coalition.
The Israeli army spokesman is categorically denying that chemical weapons were used. He says that in fact what has hit the Tel Aviv and Haifa and coastal area, each one amounted to equal to a small bomb, and there's no mention of unconventional weaponry.
The Israeli government supporting America's political aims and complying with the United States government requests, decided to refrain from a preemptive attack on those launching pads, on those missile launchers from which we were threatened. We knew that this was a calculated risk. The state of Israel has paid the dearest price of any of the countries in the Middle East which have faced Iraqi aggression, except Kuwait itself.
And that was the Israeli ambassador to Washington earlier in Washington this evening. As you can see, it has been an up again, down again kind of evening. The first part of the evening filled with uncertainty and just the horror of not knowing what was going on in Israel. As the evening has progressed, it appears that the damage was mercifully small in Israel and that the number of casualties has been mercifully small. Indeed, by all accounts, it appears that no one was killed in the attack by those Iraqi Scud missiles against the State of Israel. Joining us now live from Jerusalem is the Deputy Foreign Minister of the State of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. Mr. Netanyahu, I realize that there are going to be limitations on what you can say and what you will say, but to the degree that you can give us some kind of assessment of the damage in Israel, most particularly with regard to human life, I wish you would.
Well, I think your description, Ted, is correct. This was a criminally designed attack. Criminal because it was aimed at our populated coastal plain where 80% of our population live, cities, no military installations. The missiles hit. I'm not going to give the exact coordinates because the last thing I want to do is help Saddam Hussein improve his aim. But he has targeted neighborhoods, people, places where
not only civilians, but elderly people live, families with babies and so on. Happily, at this moment, I don't think we have any loss of life, but not because he hasn't tried, and he may still try again.
Do you have any reason to believe, and I know you can't look into Saddam's mind any better than we can, but do you have any reason to believe that these missiles were in effect sent into Israel as a means of sort of gauging the range, and that there is still a likely possibility that more missiles will be coming, and that those in fact could hold either chemical or biological warheads?
So far he hasn't used chemical or biological weapons. But Dick Cheney said at the early stage of this conflict, before the military confrontation took place, he said, Saddam Hussein has never had a weapon that he hasn't used. And we definitely think that he may very well, if given the opportunity, if he feels that he can get away with it, he'll do it. He is a man who will just stop at nothing. And this is not the first time, I can tell you, that the Jewish people have been threatened by mad tyrants who are out to gas them. But as I can tell you, and I can tell your audience, this time we're prepared. The difference today is that the Jewish people can do something about it, and we reserve the right to self-defense. We will exercise it if necessary.
Now, if there is something that has always been predictable about the state of Israel, it is that in the past, any time that Israel is attacked, it responds, and it usually responds with a multiple show of force. What is most striking, and I realize that we're only talking about events that are a few hours old, but what is most striking at the moment is that apparently the state of Israel has not yet responded. And there seems to be reason to believe that in so doing it is at least complying with the wishes of the United States, which wants to keep that coalition, among which there are some Arab states, together. Should we expect that Israel will continue to show restraint if there are no further attacks?
Ted, I'm not going to say what we're going to do, when we're going to do it, if we're going to do it, over what targets, at what timing. That's the last thing that I want to say on this program. Especially for the benefit of Saddam Hussein. I will say that from the start we have assumed extraordinary risks by knowing that this man threatens and means his threats and not taking preemptive action. We have also been very sensitive, I think understandably so, to the concerns of the United States, to the complexity of the American leadership position here in this most difficult international alliance against Saddam Hussein. But as I've said at the start of this program, we reserve the right of self-defense. It is something that, of course, any country, and especially the Jewish state, cannot forfeit, and we, of course, will not forfeit it.
I'm sure Israel always has excellent intelligence. That, first of all, I'm sure you have some reports from the United States and from your colleagues over there, and also independent reports. How successful do you think the first 24 hours of Allied raids against Iraq have been?
Pretty good. Pretty good, and I'm still very impressed with the results, even though, of course, some things have gotten through. But it's clear that there are many possibilities still left over. We said repeatedly over the last 24 hours that this is perhaps the end of the beginning, to borrow Churchill's phrase, but that he still had the capacity to launch attacks against us, and presumably not against us alone. That assessment has been proven correct by the firing of these missiles, and we cannot say that he has been eliminated as or his other capacity has been eliminated. I would say that as long as Saddam Hussein has any way, any capacity to fire weapons in our directions, we have to expect that he might use them.
You'll have to forgive me. My mind is not what it sometimes is, and I've forgotten the name of what those anti-missile missiles are, but I know when I was in Israel just the other day, there was a shipment, a C-5A from the United States that delivered some
Patriot missiles.
The Patriot missiles, thanks very much. Delivered some of those Patriot missiles to Israel. There was a C-5A that landed there while we were there. Is it that you haven't used them, that they didn't work, or that you don't yet have them in place? What's the story there? How did those Scuds get through?
Well, you know that there is very little conventional up-to-date technology to stop missiles. The Patriots is the most advanced. It's being assimilated now into our defense system. But I don't think that we should discuss, not even on Nightline, the nature of our defenses and the nature of our responses. That is something that will become evident as time goes on.
All right, Minister Netanyahu, it was good of you to come in, especially after such a night, and I thank you very much for joining us. ABC's Bob Zelnick, our Pentagon correspondent, is standing by now at the Pentagon. Bob, has there been another backgrounder briefing? What do you have?
We have some diplomatic and military source information, Ted. First of all, let me go to how you opened the program by saying there was no knowledge as to whether the Israelis had in fact or were in fact in the process of responding to tonight's events. My information is that at the current time there is no Israeli action underway, nor has there been one up until now. Number two, it was a night of great confusion. I have confirmed at one point the report did reach the Israeli embassy in Washington that one of the missiles had been in fact chemical or nerve gas, and Americans were informed about that. Everyone was relieved later to find out that that was not the case. Then the U.S., when the full situation was known, in many conversations with the Israelis, actually continuing conversations this evening, promised that U.S. planes, extra sorties, would be sent out immediately, and in fact they have been sent out to try to search for those mobile Scud launches in western Iraq and to take them out. Now, my understanding of the Israeli military assessment was that there was some initial doubt amid the period of euphoria throughout the day, because many Israeli combat veterans said that the night reports of pilots who fly these missions are not always reliable. And in fact, the Israelis are not convinced even that all the permanently based Scuds were taken out, let alone the mobiles. And the Israelis are very anxious to see the results of tonight's work in western Iraq to make sure that that threat has been substantially diminished. My own intuition, and I stress the word intuition, based upon tracking this story not only tonight but over the past several weeks, is that the Israelis are not anxious at all to involve themselves in a crisis which is one that, for a change, looks to be working out fairly well for them as the United States and its allies break the military back of a powerful, putative enemy.
Since the Deputy Foreign Minister, I understand, is still standing by in Jerusalem, let me at least give him an opportunity to respond to you. I think you might want to leave what Bob Zelnick has said all by itself, but in case you want to react, let me give you that last opportunity.
Well, Bob Zelnick is always a good correspondent, but assessments are assessments, and again, I don't think that we should contribute more than I've said here. I do think that what's instructive here is that aside from the immediate question of what will happen here, what we will do, what will be done, I have two observations. The first is that we're in close consultations with the United States throughout. We are allies. We are talking to one another. We are trying to explain the positions of each other to each other. We're sovereign states, but we are very close allies. So we are independent and we act independently, but we try also to make sure that we understand and consult with each other. Secondly, I think that this is something that goes beyond the moment. Here you have, I think, a demonstration of what we've been up against all these years. These people, these Saddams, the Saddams of the Middle East, of this world, are raining down TNT onto our cities. My parents are, well, my father is over 80 years old, my mother is slightly younger. They get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to put on gas masks, and so do millions of others in Israel, young and old alike. This is what we've been facing. This is the kind of tyrant that is in collusion with the PLO. People have been asking us, why don't you talk to the PLO? The PLO is asking Saddam to gas us. This is what we've been up against, and I hope that this is the final, perhaps the dramatic opportunity for the world to understand what it is that we've been talking about all these years.
Mr. Netanyahu, thank you for joining us. When we come back, we'll be joined by the former Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger.
Nightline. ABC News coverage of the Gulf War will continue in a moment.
This good boy shares what he has with the rest of his class. This bad boy doesn't.
Save $700 on new 1991 Jeep Cherokees.
Next time you're dining out, we invite you to try something sparkling. Something that won't cost a thing. Just pick up a packet of Equal. There, the blue one, and taste. We think you'll be so surprised by the great taste of the one with NutraSweet. You'll want to buy a box of Equal for the next time you're dining in.
Iraq attacks Israel and Saudi Arabia. Missiles hit Tel Aviv and Haifa. Stay with the experience of Peter Jennings and the people of ABC News tonight.
And as I mentioned just before the break, joining us now live from New York, I believe, is Dr. Henry Kissinger, the former Secretary of State. We have spent, Dr. Kissinger, as I'm sure you know, an extraordinary 26, 28 hours sort of tracking events on a moment-by-moment basis, and it seems to me to be an appropriate time to step back a little bit and to get from you an assessment of where you think we are and where you think we're going.
I think that first of all, the president deserves a lot of credit for his courage in ordering this attack. To me, it looks as if it is well on the way to achieving what should be our fundamental goal there, which is to try to establish a military balance between Iraq under Saddam Hussein and the moderate Arab states of the area that are our friends. Until this attack, we were in the dilemma that we could not leave without opening a huge gap in military capabilities, and we could not stay without undermining the governments with which we were associated. And we could not wait because because it wasn't possible to keep hundreds of thousands of troops in the desert for 12 to 18 months. I believe that this, if we all keep our cool now, I think that this exercise will enable the president to achieve the objectives that he has set. Kuwait will almost certainly be liberated. The Iraq military capacity will be reduced to a point that it will take years to build up again if the world should be foolish enough to give them advanced military equipment. And so I think that when all of this is over, we can crystallize an equilibrium in the Gulf area and then turn to the Palestinian issue for negotiations.
Now, it may be somewhat premature, and I'm sure you appreciate better than most the dangers of sort of concluding assessments, and it was my fault because I asked you to give an assessment, but of making assessments based upon the presumption that everything is just going to go along swimmingly from here.
No, it isn't going to go along swimmingly, but the final outcome is, and there are going to be ups and downs like what happened tonight, which is certainly a disappointment, but not a total surprise. And we might have setbacks, but it seems to me that the outcome is going to be fairly clear. It is a significant reduction in the military threat posed by Iraq and the freeing of Kuwait. The only issue is with what complication it will be achieved.
You were listening, as I was, to what Deputy Foreign Minister Netanyahu had to say,
Yes.
And while clearly it is a terrible thing, and I'm sure he more than most is horrified by what happened in Israel tonight, nevertheless, I detected in his closing remarks in particular almost I don't want to say a sense of satisfaction, but at least satisfaction to the degree that it was like a sigh of relief, a sense that here's what we've had to contend with, and perhaps now the American public will be even more supportive of what is going on than it is right now. Take a crack at that, would you?
Well, I noted that that sense of satisfaction, and I think that it doesn't have to be emphasized quite so strongly all the time, because I think Americans now recognize that Saddam Hussein attacked a country which was not participating in the Kuwait issue at all, did it in order to provoke an attack on himself that he could then use against those Arab masses that hate Israel enough so that they will side with any enemy of Israel, regardless of who started the conflict. All of this is true, and all of this will become apparent. And in my view, it will become especially apparent to the extent that Israel shows some restraint in its response, as I believe it has and will show. So I think that part of the Arab-Israeli issue, or Iraq-Israeli issue, is becoming clear. The questions, the problem for the United States is twofold. One, if one wants to put it in perspective, one, we had to avoid having an Iraq that is too strong. The other hand, it's also not in our interest to have an Iraq that is so weak that it will tempt the adventurism of its neighbors, especially countries like Iran, because that would repeat the mistake that was made in the Iraq-Iran war, where Iran was so weakened that Iraq received a free hand. Secondly, when this balance in the Gulf is reestablished, inevitably, Middle East negotiations will begin, and it is therefore good for Israel and the United States at this stage to gain confidence in each other, because I think those negotiations will prove to be extremely complicated.
All right, Dr. Kissinger, it was very gracious of you to come in and join us. Thank you very much. Standing by at the White House right now is my ABC colleague, Britt Hume. Lights still burning there?
No, Ted, the lights have gone down now, and it appears that the team of national security advisors, indeed the entire Bush High Command that had assembled in the National Security Advisor Scowcroft's office, have now decided they're going to get a little rest. The sense I have, Ted, is that a major sigh of relief has been heaved here tonight after the Israelis came forward to announce what no doubt the United States government already knew, that it was not going to be flying any airplanes out to attack Iraq and carry out and in effect bring about exactly the scenario that Saddam Hussein must have wanted. And Ted, it strikes me that this all may go back, if it goes back to any one moment, to a meeting here in the White House just a few weeks ago when Yitzhak Shamir was here to speak with President Bush. A lot of tension had existed between the two men, and afterwards, the meeting, first of all, was very warm, the warmest meeting they've ever had, and afterwards Shamir praised the president's leadership and said that he had received assurances that no settlement of this situation would be done at Israel's expense, and we all thought that's what Shamir was happy about. I've since been told by very authoritative sources, Ted, that he was happy about that, yes, but happier still about the sense he picked up from President Bush that the president was going to move ahead, that he was prepared to smash Saddam Hussein, and that absolutely delighted Shamir, and perhaps, I think, paved the way toward the cooperation that we saw here tonight on this issue.
All right. Although, Britt, before I leave you, I just want to at least raise the question that was raised by Benjamin Netanyahu. He did not say that Israel was not going to respond. I mean, he left sort of hanging the notion that Israel always reserves the right as an independent nation. And while clearly they are not responding tonight, the impression was left that should they feel the need to, they can and they will.
Well, Ted, that's of course true. That's what he must say. I think the greater worry is not that Israel will feel the need to respond to this attack, which is, after all, 10 Scud missiles hit Israel tonight and didn't kill anybody. The greater concern is that those missiles might be used, as has been suggested, as rangefinders, and a further attack may come and perhaps do more damage, at which point the Israelis might feel compelled to respond. And there's also a concern felt at very high levels in the United States government about Jordan. The king, as you know, has said, the king of Jordan, King Hussein, has said that any foreign aircraft that attempts to overfly its territory would be shot down. That's the most natural and obvious route for Israel to take for any counterattacks, any sorties it might fly into Iraq. That would embroil then an Arab nation with a lot of sympathy for Saddam Hussein in the war against the coalition, and would cause all kinds of problems. So obviously there are potential problems yet to come, but this night at least turned out better than it seemed it was going to.
All right, Britt Hume, thanks very much. And let's just take a look at the events of the evening to bring you up to date with events thus far. At about 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 a.m. in Israel, 8 to 10 missiles hit areas in Israel along the Mediterranean coast. We know that Tel Aviv and Haifa were hit. The Israeli ambassador to the United States said later in the evening that there were no fatalities, but at least 6 people were injured. The missiles did not carry chemical warheads. This comes at the end of a day when the United States and its allies continued almost constant bombing of Iraqi targets. One Navy jet fighter was hit and its pilot killed. The Pentagon has released the name of the lost airman, Lieutenant Commander Michael Speicher, 33 years old. He is listed as missing. Also, a British and Kuwaiti plane were hit, and the White House has issued a statement tonight which deplored the missile attack on Israel and repeated that if Saddam Hussein wanted the bombing to stop, all he had to do was surrender. We're going to take a break. We'll be back with more in a moment.